Um, Good evening. It's the Select Board's August 12th, 2020 meeting. And first, out of an abundance of caution, I would just like to let all the participants know that Dr. Cindy Christensen has informed us that she's recording the meeting, and she does have a right to do so. Thank you very much. Now I'll call the meeting to order, and I would like to first have the board members introduce themselves. We've been talking about the 30th anniversary of the ADA, and it really is best practice for each member to state their name. People can become familiar with their voices and know who's on the board. So I'll begin. My name's Melinda Collins, and I'm the chair of the Select Board.
Katie Conlon, I'm the vice chair.
Arthur Doyle, I'm the newest member of the board
So
and
you all
serving
need
as
to
the
unmute.
secretary.
Katie, would you introduce yourself first?
Melinda, can you hear me? I think there's an
We
audio
seem to be
problem.
having an audio
I think there's
problem.
an audio issue that you're having, Melinda.
Yeah, because Melinda, I can hear.
Okay, I can't hear anyone. Let's just pause for a moment and thank you.
Can you hear us now, Melinda?
Still can't hear anyone. Okay. I think I can hear everyone. Could someone say something?
Testing.
Excellent. Okay. There's something wrong with my computer. My apologies. So I'll begin again. We'll call the meeting to order, and out of an abundance of caution, I will just alert everyone that Dr. Cindy Christensen is recording the meeting, and members of the public have the right to do so. If members of the board could start just by saying their names, as I was trying to say earlier, it's the 30th anniversary of the ADA, and there are some best practices that we could adopt to help people get to know our voices and who we are. I'm Melinda Collins. I'm chair of the select board.
Katie Conlon, vice chair.
Arthur Doyle, the newest member of the board and secretary.
Mike or Richard?
Richard, I think you're next in order.
He's on mute.
That's all right, Mike. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm Mike Zulis. I'm a member of the board.
Right, and our other member is Richard Wells, and our town administrator, Michael Dennehy, is also with us. So, thank you. Before we say the Pledge of Allegiance, the board would like to take a moment and just appreciate Mr. Bernie Lynch, who passed recently and has made a lot of contributions to our town, for which we'll always be grateful. Thank you. Not only was Mr. Lynch a town meeting member and a town constable, but he served on the planning board and was president of Milton Cable Access, and also the grandfather of our current director of Milton Cable Access. And he was involved in the Kiwanis Club and also served on the Patient and Family Advisory Council for Milton Hospital. So he has a wonderful legacy that we're all benefiting from. And we just would like to pass our thanks and sympathies on to his family and friends. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you.
It's a very nice picture of Bernie, Madam Chair.
It's
Captures
lovely.
Bernie's smile and his personality, and he's going to be missed. And he contributed a lot to the town over the years. So grateful for his service, and nice to see his grandson, Michael Lynch, carrying on his legacy at Milton Access.
Our condolences to you, Michael.
Thank you, everyone. And now if people would please join us in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
Allegiance to the flag
to the flag of
of
the United,
United States of America,
and to the
to the
republic
republic
for which it stands,
One
one nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with liberty
and
and
justice
justice
for
for
all.
all.
Thank you. And now we'll move on to public comment. So we have a rather large agenda this evening, and so we're going to do our best to keep public comment to 15 minutes this evening. Usually we don't have a need to do that, but we're hoping that we can keep people to 3 minutes, which is our usual time. And we'd like to remind people that civility is supported here, and we want everyone to refrain from making personal attacks or interrupting people's speaking time. So we appreciate everyone for doing so. And so I will ask people to raise their hands. Those on phone can press *9 to raise their hands. And then I'll take names, or if there are just telephone numbers, I'll call the last 3 digits. and people can give me their names so that I can call them. So 323. Hillary, could we unmute 323 so I can take the person's name? Hello?
323. Go ahead.
Yes. 323.
Hi, this is Cindy Christensen. I'm having similar problems with audio, so I'm calling in on the phone.
Okay.
I want to also clarify, I'm not the person doing the recording of the select board meeting tonight.
Thank you.
But somebody is. Anyway, my name is Cindy Christensen. I'm a town meeting member for Precinct 7, and I live at 59 Colomar Street in Milton. Last week, I asked this board 2 simple questions. You did not answer my questions. Regarding the first one, the select board stubbornly refused to answer the simple question, will you now require that your MCAC rep correct the flight path map submitted for the RNAV study and post these corrections on the website? Your refusal to answer this question unsettles me. Here is the past year life cycle for the bogus town maps and how they've changed when others and I have told you that they were wrong, but you never corrected them. Your request and recommendations document that you sent directly to the FAA last summer had a version of the incorrect flight path maps. I'm going to call that incorrect version number 1. In November of 2019, your MCAC rep handed out an incorrect flight path map at a meeting that was different from the one that you included in your recommendations. Many residents told you and the rep that this map also was incorrect. The way he had drawn the flight paths, the planes would have had to land in the ocean. I'm going to call that incorrect map version number 2. 2 weeks later, after the November meeting, I wrote to the rep and asked when the latest incorrect map, the one I'm calling version 2, would be corrected. No response. But a few days later, then Chair Zulis wrote this in an email message to me. My understanding is that Tom followed up on that map after the November 14th meeting, as he said he would do. Well, the MCAC rep didn't. 2 weeks after that, Chair Zulis followed up to say that the corrected maps were now on the town website. And that is how we got to incorrect map version number 3. Although this version no longer showed the maps landing in the ocean, they continued to falsely show the 2 approach paths merging to 500 feet either side of the MCAC rep's home. They don't. Admittedly, several years ago, I believed him too when he was saying this, but he's wrong. So incorrect map version number 3 stayed local until January, when this board and the rep falsely claimed a next day deadline for a document that they said would simply reiterate the original request and recommendation document. It was included in the document that was sent to the MCAC and to the MIT consultant. That map, incorrect map version number 3, has now circulated to all MCAC members, some of their appointing authorities, to the MIT and beyond. 3 incorrect map versions since June of 2019. And last week, a refusal by this board to answer my question. Will you now require that your MCAC rep correct the flight path map submitted for the RNAV study and post it on the website? This has really gotten ridiculous. So please respond to my question. As I asked last week, I again ask that you please refrain from criticizing me when you respond, if you respond. Please don't waste time by telling us that we need rules for citizen speak or give sermons about free speech. Please don't try to redefine words. Please simply just tell the residents whom you represent that you will correct the maps for the benefit of their health, quality of life, and property values. And please, then we can all move on to other important topics. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Christensen. Does anyone else wish to speak? Don't see anyone. Okay. Our next item is our COVID-19 discussion and update. So we have sort of 3 subtopics under this, but I think it's noteworthy that some guidance has changed with the state recently. And as of yesterday, the state has come out with some new color-coded metrics for DESI and when it's appropriate to be in remote versus a hybrid versus a full in-time person model. And there's actually a map now that the state is using to track this sort of yellow or red, yellow, green mode. And at the moment, Milton is in the green, and there's the map that they're using. You can actually track this on the state website. So green is average daily cases per 100,000, less than 4, and of course we're about 27,000, so that's 1 or so, a little more. So that's where we find ourselves at the moment. So there's that guidance. The other piece of guidance that also changed is that outdoor gatherings have been reduced from 100 to 50 individuals. Restaurants are still 25 indoors, and food, meaning a meal, needs to be served with alcohol in restaurants. So that has all those things have some implications for what we're going to be discussing here. Our first item is discussion and or approval of permitting for block parties. And while the Board of Health is happy to join us if and when we can find a mutually workable time, they weren't able to join us today. And we did receive, I believe everybody received their statement on block parties that Michael Coughlin of the DPH office, Department of Public Health Office of Local and Regional Health, advises that block parties should be discouraged. And Laura Richards, who's the chair of the Board of Health, I also had a conversation with her, and she agrees with those recommendations that they should be discouraged at this time in Milton. So if board members would like to ask questions or ask for follow-up or make comments, we do have a couple of applications for block parties, so it would be good to get a sense of what the board's feeling on this is.
Madam Chair, I'd be inclined to follow the Board of Health's lead, but I want to understand, do they want to come in and meet with us before we take action, or is it enough that you've spoken with the chair and we have a memo from Caroline Kinsella?
Right. They did not indicate that they needed to speak with us. They just wanted us to have something since they couldn't be here. But it is, block parties are under our purview, and they seem perfectly comfortable with us just following the guidance as they are doing from the state.
And we have a couple of them pending. Could the town administrator maybe give us a sense of whether there's been any discussion between the office and the applicants about the concerns?
Correct, Madam Vice Chair, thank you. Yes, we've had a couple of applications. The people obviously couldn't come into town hall to fill them out, so the conversation, Jennifer McCullough in the office handles those. She did voice the concern over the guidance from the state that this board would be taking it up at a future board meeting tonight, and that we were looking for guidance from both the local Board of Health, our health director, and DPH. So they're aware. We have a couple pending right now. The season normally starts sometime in September when people come back and start getting back to their post-Labor Day lifetimes. But yeah, it has been explained to them that it could be unlikely this year.
So where we don't actually have the request for permits right here, I'm wondering what our procedure might be. Is it simply a phone call from our licensing agent, Mr. Wells? Oh, you're still muted. Hello.
I got it.
Great.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Block parties, as Michael knows, are a pretty common thing. They come in every summer. I think this is a simple task. We're in the heat of it right now. I think anyone who applies, his office can direct it and just say, look, we're not approving any block parties.
Mhm.
I think if they want to have their own private property, they're going to do it anyway. Our role is in block parties is, if you're not aware, is we close the street so they can use the street. So we don't approve it, and I think that's a pretty simple thing. And I think most people will understand it. A couple of people asked me at the Eddie Duffy thing on Sunday the same thing about what would happen. But I think we've been to COVID now. We're in like month 4 or 5. I think people have gotten used to it.
And Member Wells, that was one of the requests too, was to open up Crane Field for a late September block party. So that party will be notified upon disapproval, if you will, from this board.
I'm aware of that. That's an annual event each year, and as Arthur knows, it's been a joint effort between EMNA and East Con Church. So it's just one of those things, like all the other things that were sacrificed with COVID. Just pray for a vaccine and look forward to 2021.
Well, Mr. Dennehy, you just said disapproval, and so that was my question. I mean, we don't have anything. We don't actually have a permit in front of us this evening, so there's nothing for us to approve or not approve. So it sounds as if Mr. Wells was just suggesting that Jennifer our licensing agents lets them know that we're not granting block party permits this year.
Okay, and just,
Yeah,
good, Member
Mr.
Zulus.
Zulus?
Yeah, it seems to me that we probably need to do something along the lines of what Richard, I think, was suggesting, and that is to issue a blanket policy that Mike can follow,
Right.
that block parties won't be allowed, until a certain date, or we can do it on a case-by-case basis. Seems to me if we do the blanket policy, that will allow for some predictability and will allow Mike to go ahead and take that action without us taking up things on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah. That's what I was getting to. Okay, Ms. Conlon.
I don't want to jump ahead of Arthur. Arthur
Okay.
hasn't spoken yet.
Mr. Doyle?
I was going to agree with that merger of thought and just make sure that it is in writing and it has attended to it. And this is the policy until further notice.
Mm-hmm.
So to that end, Madam Chair, I'll make a motion that we that the office disapprove applications for block parties through December 31st, 2020, and then we can consider it next year as conditions
That's
exist at that time.
Excellent.
Second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor? Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. Thank you. So now, item 4B, discussion approval large outdoor gatherings. So this has a number of possible applications, if you will, and this is something that we may benefit from having further discussion with the Board of Health. I spoke with Laura Richards again about this, and without having the full sense of her board, her feeling was that if a property owner is following the state guidelines, then there's not really any issue. So it would have to be a gathering of 50 or less people, socially distanced, masks, and of course, if it's not in a restaurant where meals are being served or a meal isn't being served along with the event, then there's no alcohol. So those were the preliminary guidance. They seem to be ready to talk to us about particular events that may come along or requests that may come along as well. So does the board have any sense or questions they'd like to ask? I know we have some requests for use for town green and perhaps some other larger sites in town that are not municipal sites.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Wells?
So I think basically the governor's been pretty clear. All we have to do is follow the governor's guidance, under 50 outside, under 25 inside. I know that the trustees will Music Festival is held, thought of having a couple of outside venues. I know Mr. Dennehy's aware and Jen was aware, but I believe Caroline's office kind of squashed that pretty quickly, which I would concur with. My gut feeling is just to stick with what the guidelines are right now, and hopefully things get better. But I think we're in this for the rest of the summer. Probably through the fall as well.
Thank you. Mr. Zulus, did you have something to say?
Well, I guess I'm unclear on what the options are, and do we need to do anything if, to Richard's point, we would just be if we were just going to be reiterating what the governor already said. I mean, is there anything we would do beyond that, I guess, is the question.
Well, it's difficult to know what members might want when considering use of town green, or I think, to my mind, an application that is for a privately owned property, as long as somebody's following the actual guidance. Say we wouldn't give it probably an alcohol permit if there are no meals being served. So I think that's a bit more clear-cut case, but where there may be some guidance needed on how the property, how the town green should be used, that may be a little different. That's just my thinking. Mr. Wells?
Just to follow up to Michael's point, I think the town green is one issue. I think it's pretty simple. We just follow the guidelines on private property on a one-day lot. You're referring to one-day liquor licenses.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a change there, Mr. Dennehy, that food's required on the one days as well? I haven't heard anything about one day. There's nothing currently on a one-day permit now about serving food, unless you do something that I'm unaware of.
I just, Member Wells, I just know that the guidance that came down from the state, for instance, any establishment that's offering liquor has to offer a full meal. To Madam Chair's point, that came down with Friday's reluctance to enter into phase 3, step 2. In other words, if you're up at Granite Links Golf Course or if you're at President's Golf Course,
Right, I get that.
you can't grab a bag of chips and a beer.
Right, but on one day, so Kevin Freitag, you can, not to give you, there's a 5-minute look you'll have to take. I didn't hear, I followed this pretty closely. I didn't hear any talk at all about communities that issue one days. And I know for a fact that on our, as you know, Mr. Denny, on our one-day applications now, nothing about food. Never has been.
That was Laura Richards' interpretation, but yes, perhaps Mr. Freitag could weigh in or look into this further for us.
Mr. Denny's right in that if you are a 138 licensed premise and you don't have food, and I can think of 2 that I know of now in the city of Quincy that closed Monday because, as I don't know whether Michael, one of you said, chips and pretzels aren't gonna do it. But I didn't hear any guidance at all on one days, and as I stated before, our current one days now do not ask anything about food. Never have.
Mr. Freitag?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that Mr. Dennehy has it right, but I'm happy to follow up and report back to the board as soon as I can.
Thank you. That would be helpful.
In a follow-up to that, Kevin, if that's true, if it does apply to one days, to the Madam Chair's point, you'd probably have to assign, they'd probably have to articulate to you, however it's outlined in phase 3, that they were in fact serving food to be able to meet the criteria for permit, if they did change that on the 138. But I didn't hear that, but you might be right, and I'm sure you'll be able to figure it out pretty quickly.
Do any other members have a question or a comment this time?
No.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
just so I understand, so our
Oh, yes,
direction,
Mr.
yeah, just so I understand, so our direction here is we're going to look at these things on a case-by-case basis and apply the governor's guidelines to the requests on a case-by-case basis for this. Is that how we're rolling on this?
For a request for a liquor license? I think.
No, I think
Oh, a large gathering?
and which could include a liquor license.
Right. I think that it depends upon what the request is. I mean, my understanding is if it's a municipal property, then we need to have a policy on it. But if it's a gathering on private property, then there's no permit needed. They would be, in this case, we're talking about a liquor license.
If they don't sell liquor, they don't even have to tell us.
Right, exactly.
But now in terms of the policy for municipal property, so it seems So do we need a policy in place in order to decide if we get a request, or is that I mean, I think that's our goal, right? That was we discussed that in connection with the congregation request.
Right. It's my understanding that Mr. Freitag is still working on some material for us to make that determination.
Okay.
It has been, we have been, as you said, rolling along the trajectory of having a policy so that people can engage more easily in around asking for use of that space. So, if we do grant that. I mean, that's the first question. Mr. Dennehy, did you want to?
Just for members Zulis's and the viewing audiences, the town was approached by a group of individuals that were looking for a liquor license of a large size gathering, and that's how it got on the agenda. Town council is going to follow through on the liquor license piece, as Member Wells brought to our attention. But it came to this board because of a liquor license asking for a large gathering on non-private property.
Okay.
And
But not town property.
Not town
Not town
property.
property.
Right.
Correct.
Okay, and did I understand from the beginning of the conversation, we're going to have a further discussion with the Board of Health on this?
We can, if the board would like to. They're ready to try to find a mutually agreeable date. They've been having trouble getting together, so it may not be their full board. But
Okay.
thank you. And now we are on to mandatory mask zones, which we also spoke about last week, or at the last meeting, pardon me. And I also had a conversation with Chair of the Board of Health, Laura Richards, and also Caroline Kinsella. And at the time when this was first brought up, Mr. Zulis first brought it up, we didn't really have the number of cases that it was felt warranted it. But of course, we're in different times now, and the Board of Health has purview over this, and they now support it. And Mr. Zulis was kind enough to revise the original draft. I think and give us something else that we could pass on to them. They said they would be happy to have the material and the research that was done before. And this may be something that we'd also like to talk with them about at the meeting. If we're meeting about something else, this may be a joint effort. So, Mr. Zulis, would you like to brief the residents and the board on any of the changes?
Sure. The original proposal was to have mandatory mask zones between the hours of 10 a.m. and 8 p.m. in the business districts on the sidewalks with businesses on them, with the idea that there's been increased pedestrian traffic and increased traffic in the business districts, which makes social distancing difficult. And so, given that it's the Board of Health, and that my understanding was that they Board of Health wanted us to suggest or give them our view on it. What I did was just to take the proposal from 2 weeks ago and put it in the form of an order from the Board of Health, and also kind of using some language that has been used by other communities in this, who have done this. So the idea is that for these areas, Granite Ave from Bassett Street south to Adams Street on the east side of the street, Adams Street from Granite Ave to Church Street on the north side of the street, and Granite Ave to Mechanic Street on the south side of the street, that's East Milton Square. Central Ave from Maple Street to Elliott Street, Elliott Street from Central Ave to Morton Road, and Adams Street from Wharf Street to Elliott Street. Those areas, we would designate those as mandatory mask zones between 10 a.m. and 8 p.m. People using those areas should wear face coverings in the event that they can't exercise social distance, and that they should exercise, social distancing. So this proposed order does not recommend any fines or any redress, other than simply designating these areas, saying our order is that you should wear, or the Board of Health's order would be, you should wear a mask here. It's not my view that we should necessarily impose fines for that. We should, hope that people will react to the order and react through moral suasion, if you will, and just by notice of the order will comply with it for the most part. I don't, it's not my view at this point that we should get in the business of having fines. I could be convinced otherwise, but I think if we put out that order and put up some signs that say, look, these are our zones where we want everyone to wear a mask, I think that will get, my view is, I think that will get most of the compliance. You're going to have outliers. You're going to have people who may not necessarily follow this, but I don't think they'd follow it even if there was a fine, those people. So that's what this draft does.
Thank you. Mr. Wells? Oh, you're still.
I am. I know. I am.
Okay.
I just. It's slow. I concur with Mr. Zulus. I just asked for one friendly amendment, Michael. Instead of Mechanic and Granite, I'd go from Pierce and Granite, because there's about 5 businesses between Mechanic Street and Pierce Street going up the street. They're not part of the business district.
So Granite Ave to Pierce?
Yeah, or Pierce Street, on Granite Ave, Pierce to however you had it going north, wherever you had it to.
So I had it, and maybe I got it wrong, Richard, but I had it Adams Street from Granite Ave to Church Street on the north side,
Yep.
and then Granite Ave to would be Adams Street from Granite Ave to Mechanic on the south side.
Just to delete Mechanic and substitute Pierce Street.
Got
And
it.
I think that will cover it.
Got it.
I think Mr. Denny's aware, you're aware of the businesses I'm referring to. You got like 5 more businesses there.
Yep.
Other than that, I'm with you. And at some point, to Mr. Zulus, we may have to have the discussion, but I do think your suggestion of just signs, it will be enough in us talking about it, publicizing it will be enough to gain enough significant compliance that people will realize, hey, I need to wear a mask. So I'm fine with it in that form. Are we voting on this?
I think it can't hurt for us to vote. Mr. Zulus?
Yeah, I think the vote would be, the vote would be to recommend it to the board.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Yeah. Well, why don't you just finish the motion?
Oh, sure. I'll make a motion that we recommend to the Board of Health an order with respect to face covering or mandatory mask zones along the lines of what has been presented.
Second.
Any more discussion?
Could I just add, I think we
Yes,
should
Susan.
defer on the issue of fines. I think we could leave that up to the Board of Health. I don't know what fines they have for, for smoking violations or for other violations that they tend to regulate. So maybe this is something we could just recommend that they consider and let them know that it's not necessarily it's not the driving factor here, and it's not what Mr. Zulus had in mind in drafting this, but they could do their own due diligence and look at what other communities are doing and decide whether they think it's appropriate.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Wells?
I agree with the Board of Health. I'm sure the assistance of town council would be, there are fines that are in the language that you can draw from,
Mhm.
if you want to apply them. And so if you won't have to look too far if they decide that they won't do that. And I think time will tell. This will be a time-tested thing. We'll see how good it works.
And if I may, to that point, there have been some communities, of similar size to us, Chatham, some other ones that they've had the order without fines, and then subsequently they added fines later on. So maybe that's maybe we see if we can get compliance, people complying on their own volition rather than through any action by the town government.
Should we add, Madam Chair, that we encourage the Board of Health to take this up as soon as possible, and maybe we could get a report back from the health director at the next meeting and the meeting after as to when they're going to issue it or take it up for consideration, or what the status of it is.
I think that's an excellent idea. If we meet with them, hopefully this would also be part of their agenda. But in case there's an issue with that, I think that makes a great deal of sense. Okay. Thank you. All those in favor? Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Rose?
That's
Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. Excellent. Thank you, everyone. Now we are going to receive a quarterly report from our building commissioner, Mr. Prondak. If he is here, I'm looking for him.
He is, Madam
Yes.
Chair. Yep.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
Chair,
Mr. Zulus?
if I just may raise one thing, there was an issue that you raised at the beginning about the meeting being recorded by one person, and
Yes.
then it was said subsequently that it was going to be recorded by someone else, and that other person wasn't named. At some point, we may want to find out who is actually recording this meeting. Doesn't really matter to me, but we may want to know that. So. Just as a point of order, I don't necessarily think we need to go into it, but at some point we may want to find out who's actually, doing the recording. So,
Would you like to do that now?
No, I think, we can probably find out after.
Okay. Hello, Mr. Prondak. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening, Joe.
Here it is.
How's that?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Good evening, Joe Prondak, Building Commissioner. So tonight I'd like to start by recognizing and thanking our employees for their diligence and hard work through this kind of crazy time in the pandemic. Too often, I think, when I do a presentation like this, I wait till the end to mention them if I even remember to. And sometimes I just say it goes without saying, but during this, it doesn't, that doesn't cut it. We are a high volume, high stress office normally, and with the pandemic added into the mix, and I'm sure it's the same for a lot of other departments. The stress level is definitely up, and the uncertainty of the pandemic itself. But through all of that, we've been able to maintain, our regular inspections, our regular operations. It does take a lot longer to process things because we don't have that one-on-one interaction of people at our counter. But things are still moving along. We do have a bigger backlog than we normally do, but things are still progressing. And so along those lines, as far as the receipts, the money receipts for our office is always a good indicator of the economy and how Milton is doing as a whole from a construction perspective. So in fiscal year 20, we took in about $15,000 more than we did in fiscal year 19. So again, just a good indicator that things are healthy from a construction point of view in Milton, and you know, a lot of that is just due to the large volume of people putting on additions and renovating existing homes, along with the Pulte project and a couple of others. The Pulte project, as you know, permitted 23 homes. So of those 23, we've issued 22 building permits. There's one left to go. And of those 22 that are issued, there are 12 of those where we've issued occupancy permits. So that project will probably be wrapping up by the end of the year, or maybe just into the beginning of 2021. There's other projects, Walcott Woods. Shortly before the pandemic started, they had a building permit to renovate one of the existing homes up there, and now they've just applied. We just received an application either yesterday or the day before for the first new building. So that project, you know, similar to what the Pulte project did for us over fiscal year 20, that project will likely help the numbers to stay healthy for fiscal 21. We have had I don't have the exact numbers, but we've had a significant amount of building permit requests for swimming pools this year because so many people are, you know, they're stuck at home and they don't want to take their kids to the beach, or they can't, and they need that extra activity, and really a record number. I wish I had that number with me, but I don't. But it certainly deserves mentioning. The Henry's project, certainly that's in full swing now. You know, they had some difficulties with foundations and soils and things of that nature, and I think they've gotten past those hurdles. So I think now you'll very quickly start to see a building develop there, and you'll start to see what that's finally going to amount to. And the last thing I had to talk about, you know, a few months ago, as we were adapting to this new way of life, Mike Dennehy reached out to us, department heads and other town hall employees, to talk about, to look into what we can do to make the town more technologically capable. So I shortly thought of, you know, back in 2009, we acquired an electronic permitting system from a company called Full Circle Technologies. And I've always known that they've had other modules, other capabilities for other town departments, but we never really gave it much thought until that thought came up from Mike. So I reached out to that company, and they've been putting on demonstrations of their other modules for other departments, including, you know, the health department, the engineering office, public works. They have a module that could be used by the select board, town administrator. That demonstration will be coming up. And in the planning department and also the zoning board of appeals, I've had demonstrations on the capability of those. all of the feedback so far from everybody who's witnessed a demonstration has been positive, and the departments would like to continue seeing how we can acquire this technology, and really what that comes down to is funding for it. And I think, ultimately you're probably looking at $100,000 proposal, but this is something that would really bring the town into the 21st century or 22nd century, however you want to put it. This is a system where the different modules can interact. So, the health department can know what the building department is doing, and the select board can know what the planning office is doing, and it's all kind of an integrated system. As we're going through the demonstrations and wrapping up on the comments and the interest in this, I think the next phase is to see if the town is interested in doing this, and if so, what would be the funding mechanism. And that's kind of what I got for tonight.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prondak, and the board shares your appreciation of you and your staff and the tremendous work you're doing under a great deal of strain. Do any of the members have a question or wish to say something? Mr. Wells?
I just want to say thank you to Joe and his staff. It's tough times, as he knows, and thank you for their diligence on behalf of the town.
Thank you, Member Wells.
You're welcome, Joe.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Prondak. Again, we all appreciate you also joining us this evening and giving us an idea of what's going on.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Now, and I see Mr. Doherty's here, we have an update from our Massachusetts Port Authority Community Advisory Committee representative, and that's Mr. Doherty. And I believe, Hillary, you may have slides as well for us.
Madam Chair, that's correct. I've made Mr. Doherty a co-host for the purpose of sharing his slides.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. Well, welcome, Mr. Doherty.
Good evening. Can the board hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. And thank you for having me here to present to the board. We've been waiting for 2 years to receive MIT's analysis of what alternative for our arrival paths are flyable, are feasible. And we've now got it, and I'm going to go through that. And I'll also review the FAA's upcoming environmental assessment with regard to runway 4L. And let me then try to put on the screen now. You should see runway 4L for our arrival paths on the screen now. Do you see that?
Yes.
Thank you. So I will go through this slide. It's on the town website. It's under the boards and committees. You then go to Massport Community Advisory Committee, and this slide is there. And I'll go through it. The red dots, which you'll see, and I'll go through them with the exception of one of them, are all waypoints on paths that were provided in writing to me by FAA, and I'm confident they are exact. In addition, the location of the 4R RNAV path, as I'll come to, MIT did independent field work, and I will show you how they corroborated my presentation on that. So let me just go then to the slide, and you'll see, let me take it from left to right, and I'll identify what you're looking at. On the left-hand side, you'll see it says yellow, it's in yellow, it says JetBlue Visual suspended, and underneath that, FMS available. And if you see that, there's a dotted yellow line.
Yes.
And that comes from around, you'll see HOCCY, that's a waypoint. All the waypoints that the planes will be flying by have 5 letters, so that's the hockey waypoint. And you'll see that that's a little bit west of the intersection of 93 and 95 South. And then it works its way up on that far side of Milton, over Mattapan, FAMRR, where my cursor is, that dot, works its way further along to what's called Shawmut, SHYMT, and along, then along up to runway 4L. That is the path that's called the JetBlue Special Path that JetBlue requested and ran its planes through until last September, when it was, quote, suspended temporarily by the FAA. However, on my inquiry, as I reported in May, and you can look at that, look on Milton Access TV for that report, that path still remains available on a so-called flight management system availability request basis, meaning since every JetBlue plane has the capability to fly that path, that 4L path, it used to be visual, and then it became what's called an RNP path, which I'll come to. But now, since it's in their FMS system, if they were to request it, they can fly it. That's that path. Now, if you go further down and you look at Route 93 and take a little bit now to the east, you'll see LVRON. That is the 4L path that's now under environmental assessment, proposed RNAV path under environmental assessment upcoming by the FAA. There's Lake Ponkapog up there is Houghton's Pond. You keep going there, so I'm going to come back to this. The Blue Hill ski slope is in there. The white jagged line, of course, is the border of Milton. Let me keep going. If you go up through the 4L RNAV and you keep going, you'll see MTAPN. Now, what I think is interesting, and it's fine, but they call that MTAPN, which is, of course, an abbreviation for perhaps Mattapan. But as we all know, Mattapan is a little bit over here, but the FAA uses that. And if you want to know where that is, it's close to Cedar Grove. If you go to Cedar Grove, and it continues down Adams Village, Dorchester, etc. That's that path. And this is called the final fix. These are called intermediate waypoints down here. Let me go to the next one. The next at the bottom, I'm at NABO, which I'm sure you may well have heard many times. NABO is the intermediate fix for the 4R RNAV, which we're talking about with respect to the MIT study. And as you can see, it's a little bit to the side there. You'll see Route 24. If you look above, you'll see Randolph Avenue, and where my cursor is. And of course, it crosses over Randolph Avenue. Randolph Avenue keeps going down and down. The final fix for the 4R RNAV path is MILTT. And that's right at the, and we'll see it in a minute, that's right at the junction of Granite Avenue and the entrance to the expressway. And then you continue on that and you get to Logan Airport for right, the purple side, okay? Let me go back a minute though. Couple of things. I'm going to talk about this, which is CHMNY. That's my designation for where the exact overflight is of 4R RNAV as it comes over Milton Hill. And I'm going to show you confirmation of independent study of where it is by MIT. Now this one, I call it Whittier, W-I-T-T-R. That is a waypoint that begins a dotted white line, if you can see it, I hope, dot, 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 dot. It goes up to SHYMT and goes on toward the landing at 4L. What is it? It is what's called a sidestep And you may remember, and it's in the literature that I've put on the website, the initial environmental report that concerns 4L and the possibility that 4R was going to be have some repairs on its runway end, states that during the repairs of the runway end, and possibly thereafter, but in any event, during those repairs, a sidestep would be created. And that's the sidestep where planes would be coming down as if they were going to land on 4R, sidestep, and then land on 4L. I just pointed out because it's there, and indeed, there are planes that use it, such as Cape Air even today. All right, next, and this is important. This is what I've designated, it's a radar-based, the ILS, right? Instrument landing system and visual path for 4R. And many residents appropriately of Milton will say, gee, I am under the 4R path. Yes, you're under this path often. That is to say, if you're at, say, a resident of Pleasant Street, Edge Hill Road, Otis Street, or Cabot Street as you go downward, that path is flown very frequently and preferred by pilots because if they're coming from the north, or they're coming from Europe, or even from the southeast, they can turn more readily and they can save a little bit of time and some fuel. And if on the other hand, if the ceiling drops, if the cloud ceiling drops, they will not be able to be on there. They have to go over to the 4R RNAV. Having said that, the 4R RNAV, when in operation, is used by many planes up to the point of more than 300 a day, whether or not it's cloudy and in completely clear weather. But this path has created a little bit of I wouldn't call it confusion, but just, okay, is this the RNAV path? Let me keep as the same final fix, MIL. Now,
Mr. Doherty, could you just repeat what you said after you were talking about cloud cover and them not being able to fly that path, just because you broke up a little bit?
I'm sorry. Yes, it's just that and I could get you the exact number of feet, but when the cloud cover, if the cloud cover is up at 3,000 feet, that's one thing. But when the cloud covering drops, when the level of the clouds drop below a certain level, the planes will be on 4R RNAV, even if it's not yet raining. But conversely, there are planes on 4R RNAV, whether it's clear or raining or not. So there is an instrument landing system, radar, that governs that path, and it does have some limitations, but it is heavily used, which explains why people experience those overflights. So then we go further, and this dashed line, dispersed alternative study request, this is an alternative that we have put forward for over 2 years time frame that would be an alternative to, and I don't mean a substitute for, but an alternative to planes proceeding on the 4R RNAV path, so as to give some relief and to provide some equity in with regard to the burden sharing of the burden of those overflights. And I want to go exactly where it is, and you'll see confirmation of this from MIT's own slide. This, and I'll start at the top. There's that SHYMT, SHYMT. Now come down and you'll see a white square. That white square is the Marina Bay set of buildings, and the smaller one that I've put the cursor on, that has big letters on the top saying Boston Scientific. Just up here above it, same big complex, that's the FedEx warehouse. You come down, this area here, you'll see some shadows. that's the North Quincy State Street complex area. Let's come down further. Here's the sort of tip of Milton. And here, if you look, that would be with Hobart Street Woods, or say, for example, Hobart Street in Quincy and Belmont Street in Quincy. Going down, then, of course, the planes are flying toward it, but I'm just trying to track it. And then down toward the, the big interchange in Braintree and the South Shore Plaza, et cetera. That's an alternative path that we've put forward for 2 years. And I'll get to it now, and I'll show you in detail. That path, when I met with MIT on July 28th, they said that's feasible, that's flyable. So that is a potential alternative to path. And now with all that introduction, let me come to MIT's slides. So this is Logan Airport Community Noise Reduction Block 2 procedures, John Hansman. This is his discussion with me, and also representative of Massport and his students and staff. Note that the slides, as always, they may be updated in the future. And the process here is represented in this slide. It's just an overview, but it's important that the need for community decision process and procedures has a number of aspects, of course, community input and proposals, and some evaluation of the complexity and recommendations. That's important, but it's not the reason I put this slide here. Right here, what shows me a degree of independence on the part of MIT, notwithstanding the fact that, of course, MIT receives considerable support from National Space Administration, Transportation Administration, FAA, et cetera, is that the analysis done by John Hansman, Dr. Hansman here, uses a noise analysis called single event metrics for on a peak day, use day where there are 50 flights or more. So let me just slow down for 30 seconds. Again and again and again, we all hear about the FAA's measurement of noise. The FAA's measurement of noise is a so-called yearly average DNL. It's the yearly average day-night sound level. And the FAA will say that we need to look and see whether or not the overflights on a yearly average day-night sound level exceed 65 decibels by day and 55 decibels by night. Here's just an easy way, and I said this directly to the regional administrator in these words at a meeting this spring. Here's the problem. If you go back and think about the Blue Hill ski area, and you wanted to know the congestion of skiers at the Blue Hill ski area, you would not take a daily and evening full year average of congestion on the hillside. You would look at when it's being used. And for example, here, when are the planes flying? And as we know, 4L, 4R facing northeast, the winds on the one hand are about 18% of the time out of the northeast, but they're used in low wind times such that they're 30% of the year, 30% of the year, not the full year. What is an indication of the independence of John Hansman is he has a treatise of 138 pages in which he and his colleagues say a single event metric for a peak day using 60, 50, 60 day, 50 night, not 65, 55, and not averaging over the year. This is the appropriate measure for looking at the sound effects of an RNAV, a channeled path. And so I think it's nice that notwithstanding FAA, and of course, I'm sure he's got, great working relationship with them, he's got the independence to say that's what he's going to use, and he did. The Block 2, as he says, it's more complex due to some operational barriers or technical issues. and of course, equity issues. Now, I'm going to be spending time on 4R and 4L, but I want you to note that we're not the only community seeking dispersion. And the best example of that, although I think some of these slides here have been superseded because the 4L community is meeting continually on this, is a suggestion for dispersion of the departures on the that you'll see in a moment all the, and it has right there in the middle, TEKK is a way.
Mr. Doherty, you broke up actually when you were explaining this slide. If you wouldn't mind backing up and just saying that again, we'd appreciate it.
The TEKK is the present path, and what the request is to analyze a rotation. One day use the middle path, the second day use a path 15 degrees to the, in this case, north, let's call it northeast of it. On the third day, use a path that is below and disperse on an alternating basis, rotating. So that's essentially the gist. It's complex, as it says, and I'll just take you through briefly a couple of the examples that they're dealing with. This is just a slide to indicate that at present, it goes over Somerville, Cambridge, Belmont, Arlington, Malden, Chelsea in a particular single way, where the planes then turn. It almost looks like a little salamander there. And then the planes turn up to the north, out to the west, and around. And at some altitude, they even can be seen at times over Milton in those departures. That's the present one. So what they then did was to say, well, let's look at these. That's number one. So let's look at 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, if it were to alternate. And they did so. And here's an impact on number 2, where there are some, on that alternate path, there are some further planes over, let's say, Malden that day, but fewer over Cambridge and Somerville. And the next day, the next day it reverses. You'll see fewer planes over Malden and more over Cambridge and Somerville. And you get the idea. The next day, a little different. The next day, very different. And it provides a rotation by the time you get to the end. And here, community suggestion, variable rotation it's called, and it has some issues. That would require procedures where the plane has to go from here to here to here. And there are quite a large number of procedures. So, and how would the rotation be managed? And that's something that MIT and that group are discussing. Okay, so let me now go to they reference 4L, 4R, but they're actually focused exclusively on 4R. First, on August 1 of 2019, based on a request that I had made, I asked MIT if they would to come to Milton and look at the location of the RNAV path. And this is a drawing, I know it's my handwriting, but if you look at it, it has essentially an area where I said, look, before the RNAV path, you have planes essentially flying on an instrument basis through here, and you'll see down below, it's hard to see, but there's the noise monitor at the edge of Cunningham Park. And this essentially is, from, let's say, the junction of Squantum and Adams Street along the way. But I said the actual location of the RNAV is to the west of that. Please come and look. They did. And what I said is that I've marked a location that is between Forbes Hill Road and Milton Road. I'm sorry, Forbes Road and Milton Hill Road on Milton Hill. So going up toward Hutchinson's Field on Adams Street. And I say that is a place where the planes on 4R repeatedly fly over, not down in the area closer towards, say, St. Agatha's or Fontmont, et cetera, which is half a mile away. And they fly to MILTT. This slide is actually turned, but you can imagine it looking north. So they came, and they went to the Rotary. As I mentioned, this is the MILTT. This is where that final fix is. There used to be a little white building in here. They don't need that anymore. 28 feet above sea level. There's the entrance to the Southeast Expressway. And they then looked up, and there's the flight on a 4-hour path right above them going to Logan for right. They then, they then went up to Hutchinson's Field, which is on Milton Hill, 141 feet high above sea level. And as you know, that Hutchinson's Field, the trustee of reservations area, is just to the side of Milton Hill Road. And they made observation there. And here they turn to the right and look up, and that is the 4-hour plane that has just crossed over the chimney, CHMNY marker that I have put, and that plane then is on the 4-hour path, and that path is flying over just off of Hutchinson's Field and just between Milton Hill Road and Forbes Road, and actually closer to Milton Hill Road, confirming that slide I show you. So now let me go to the options. The most important are the active options, and the most important of those are the RNAV, RNP enabled lateral modifications, and I'm going to explain that. Why are those the most important? Because the next two, increased use of continuous descent, delayed deceleration approaches, I'll just spend a minute or two on those. They may have some benefit for Stoughton and Canton, but they don't benefit Milton. And the last two are rejected because of some complexities, which are safety and others, which I'll explain. So what's important and what I'll spend time on is right here, RNAV and RNP. And just so we spend a second on RNP, RNP means required navigational performance. So it is a form of RNAV, but it has a special ability to, on board, have monitoring and alerting technology that allows more curved path capability. An RNAV path without RNP does not have that. And that's important, as we'll see. All right, so all right. So we're gonna look at this red entry here, RNAV, RNP. First one, this explains the questions and the answers. For an RNAV path, and that, for example, for our RNAV path that we saw going straight from over Hutchinson's Field and over to the MILTT waypoint, it will at most intercept the MILT waypoint, the final fix, at a 15-degree angle. That's an RNAV path. It's just like your car, it will know exactly where it is, but it doesn't have the kind of onboard monitoring and alerting capability that the RNP has, which allows a much more flexible final fix approach. And it assumes certain altitudes, but that's not an issue with regard to what we're talking about. So they looked at these, and some of these you've seen before, but some not. A Route 3 overflight, a minimum population exposure from the south, they call it, a converging late intercept, which is what we requested as well, and some RNP options, the minimum population, something called Carnice, I'll show you that, a 4-mile offset, and a converging late intercept. Let me show you now these one at a time. And this may be one of the most easily, I think it's complex, but I think it's most important and easily kind of capturing of everything we need to know. What is the so-called baseline? That's the RNAV path. It's in black there, and I'm pointing it. It's the first way you see. Now, none of the 4L paths are on here. This is all they're looking at 4R. And that's the baseline. That's the RNAV path. The next is in red, the RNAV Route 3 approach, and that comes up, and as we know, it would then through the Southeast Expressway, and it would join at the point of the final fix, and it would then approach. And I'm going to come back to that, but that is the red. Then there's a blue. It's hard to see, but they call it a minimum population exposure from the south approach. It's meaning that you're on the RNAV path all the way until you get just almost to the very end of the Milton-Quincy border, and you turn onto a little bit of Quincy and then come back. I'll show you that. Then, importantly, in green is this. They call that the offset approach, meaning it's offset from the basic path, but it is RNP. So it only planes that can have that technology can fly that path. Having said that, I'll show you that means all the JetBlue, and I'll show you other airlines that are as well. It's important because as we'll see in Quincy, and then next we'll look at, I'll call this magenta. That's again a minimum population RNP, and it goes over the water and has a significantly lower population impact, which is important. And to cut to the chase, and I'll show you in detail, the red is, the green is determined to be feasible, and the magenta is determined to be feasible, as is the path that we suggested, and I'll come to that. Now you have the RNP mirrored visual approach. That is the approach that I showed you in the very first slide. And that approach goes over Quincy and then goes up as I showed you. And I'll come to that in better detail. But I want to show you why that is important in one respect, which is most easily done by this. If you look at the angle of the JetBlue visual path, what we're trying to do is to mimic that angle. Why? Because that angle is one that is already utilized and already able to merge with the 4L RNAV path. If that's doable, and it is because it's been utilized, then that's what creates the desire to say, well, why can't you therefore mimic that as an alternative, same angle, 24 degrees, and same ability to merge. Merge meaning the planes coming up on either path have to obviously go to the same runway, so they have to be in sequence. One person once said to me, well, if they come up on these paths, you'll have more planes arriving, not fewer. No, it's just like fingers on your hand. There's only one wrist. So those planes have to be 3 miles. They have to be 50 seconds, and they're playing at 180 miles an hour. So if it would be you know, every minute, right, is 3 miles. And they have to be in a sequence behind each other, such that even whether they're on the RNAV path or they're on the JetBlue path, they're approaching in a way that's behind each other as they get to the, and that has worked. So that was one of the rationales for the same degree, 24 degree difference and sequence. Okay, now let me speed up. Here they all are. Here's the first. So this is feasible, but you must keep in mind that it therefore joins at a point where you come up the Southeast Expressway, you get into the East Milton area, and you already have people who are themselves subject to the not simply this RNAV path, but also that visual path, and consequently, it may be feasible, but it may not be desirable. That's something I think to consider seriously. But this difference here shows, if it's green, it shows that there would be, if this were used, the red rather than the green, there would be, you know, that degree of difference. Next, here you have a small difference in population with a small impact and small variance. It's completely doable and feasible, they say, and yet would you want to go through all the trouble of prioritizing this when the benefit isn't that significant, simply because the plane was able, without having any RNP, any special technology, it was able to do a little bit of a turn. It may be feasible, but it may not be as desirable as others. This, however, is pretty important. This shows over Braintree at a higher altitude, then descending over Quincy, then over water. And because of that, the actual population impact is lower. Obviously, it's 32,000, as it says on the right, straight in versus 25,000. So there's a population. It's obviously a different population, and yet it's a population that has not been sharing any of the burden since the RNAV adoption. And that's the point of this is feasible. This would be one that one might want to consider saying, if we were to prioritize, and they've asked us, please rank your preference. This might be one that you would want to consider that. And they call it an offset because it's set off from the main. And here is an even more interesting, or equally interesting, but a larger population difference, in the sense that because it's more over water, and the plane coming, I don't know if you've experienced it, once upon a time, and I'm old enough, before RNAV, I remember the planes coming over World's End, which is a trustees of reservation location in Hingham, and then you'd be over water, and then it would curve in. This shows that the 32,000, if it comes over Milton and straight in terms of population impact, only about a third of that if, on the other hand, if the planes were to come over Hingham and Cohasset and in an alternating fashion in one of the alternative modalities, not used necessarily either of these every day, but on a rotating basis, and it is flyable. This is not. It's rejected for a lot of reasons, starting with the fact that it tends to go over and near Hull, which is already, both on arrivals and departures from other runways, very, very much exposed. And in addition to that, it has other emerging in complexities, so we won't spend any time on that. Now here, we have the question about, Town of Milton requested an additional dispersion option to be considered that mirrored the 4L JetBlue RNAV visual approach, which I've talked about earlier. And that resulted in MIT choosing to do 2 additional procedures that were analyzed. One procedure with RNAV and one with RNP. Okay, and let me show you that. And this is an important slide. This is MIT's slide. Now, I've shown you twice, and I'll show you now. Let me read this line, and then I'll show you this green path here. The RNP track, green, is the route requested for analysis by Milton. That's the route as an alternative that we requested, and it mirrors the JetBlue visual RNAV. It does not meet criteria for RNAV procedures. In other words, something else in addition is needed, and could only be implemented as an RNP procedure, which is the procedure that is used just as in the JetBlue situation, that it's mirroring, where you have onboard monitoring and alerts. And then what they did is they looked at an alternative track that does meet RNAV, and that is shown in magenta. Well, let's first look at the one that they say goes to waypoint 1, WPONE. That is, once again, if you look at that, I'm pointing, if you can see it, where the cursor is. There you have the Marina Bay, and there you have the FedEx and the Boston Scientific Building. Then you come down North Quincy, and you've got the State Street complex, etc. You come down further, you see a little green, I'll call it square, probably a rectangle. That's Hobart Street and Belmont. Milton is to the left of that. Then it goes on down toward Social Plaza. So that confirms specifically exactly where that path can and would be. And note that 35, there's an 11 there. I don't know if you can see it, but I'm pointing to it. So 35 minus 11, that's a 24-degree angle. And that's therefore confirming what it was that we were suggesting that they could do if they wanted to do a mirror of the JetBlue path. The answer, yes. Now, they also said, well, if you just wanted to have an RNAV path that did not have that capability, there would be a 15-degree offset. You may remember up above in the earlier slides, the very first one that compared RNAV with RNP, it said 15 degree. However, that path is not so far different from the existing ILS path. So consequently, this is the path we were asking them to look at. That's good. We also wanted to know whether this path, if you obviously could extend that intersection further, the breadth here could be wider. They said, no, this is the only thing that can happen there. And consequently, you've got a path that, in my view, is not adding any equity assistance. This one certainly does, the green one. Okay. And here's the indications. This is the RNP, and it would be coming over Braintree and Quincy. Yes, it does affect a larger population, and that's important. On the other hand, it's a population that hasn't been carrying any of the burden, and it is feasible. This is also feasible, but as I just mentioned, it looks pretty close to that ILS path, and I don't see why we would want to make an RNAV out of that ILS path. There's not anything new about this. I just want to respond to that question. In November, I made a presentation. It's on the Milton, and I had a dispersion request presentation, and there it is. Now, the way I presented it is I said, okay, here's the Marina Bay, et cetera, and it goes down and down. Well, MIT has now nailed that exactly where the 20, but this is essentially, so it's not new. Go very quickly. Let me just say that these are easy to understand even though they look complex. And that's this. The normal path comes down and then levels out. This would be a continuous descent, and it has some potential advantages, but it's not beneficial to us. Planes would come around one way or the other, and they would be at an initial higher altitude, say 4,000 feet, and then go down gradually. However, anything in gray means that there's no noise benefit. There may be a detriment, but there's no noise benefit. It may have a little bit of benefit out at Stoughton and Canton, but not Milton. Similarly, they tried a different way with a slightly different baseline altitude, but it didn't have any benefit either. Next, they tried delayed deceleration. So to decelerate, you essentially you'll need to widen the flaps because the wing has to be wider if the plane is going to have lift when it's going more slowly. And they tried delayed deceleration. But here, immediately, when you look at it, you can see, well, is this going to really work? They're talking about taking a distance from the airport of where some flaps are deployed, and not 30 miles out, but 15 miles out. Well, 15 miles out, as you could probably guess, is going to be too far out to help us, although they did test it at Atlantic City Airport, and doesn't help us. But that was tried. And then there are a couple of others I'll spend 1 second on. Steeper descent. They actually, this little box actually belongs over here, but a steeper descent and glide slope. There were safety concerns with that. And then they had a delayed landing gear, and the landing gear wouldn't even have any effect until after the final fix. But let me just pause for a second. You'll hear about this later on, not tonight. We all know that there are planes on 4R and 4L coming over us. At 1,700 feet might be at the final fix or a little bit before that. The landing gear that is deployed on the planes coming over us, much earlier than that. You're going around Randolph Avenue, you ask any of your neighbors, and that is a significant contributor to noise, but it's not for us tonight. Okay, this is the slide I've been over numerous times, and what I'll do now, if it's okay, is I'll spend just a couple of minutes on the 4L environmental assessment, which is upcoming. And that's with regard to this green path here for the FAA to assess whether or not they will determine that there's really no impact of taking the existing path and changing it into an RNAV path from an ILS path. And we wrote to them, both the MCAC, it talks about Tom Doherty asked us, and we agree to alert the FAA. We think it's the wrong time for the FAA to be doing an environmental assessment of the 4L. Why? Number one, the planes are not flying. People are dealing with COVID. They can't meet. They can't do field work. And virtual meetings are not sufficient. And in addition, Dorchester and Mattapan, have people who are, among other things, dealing not only with COVID, but their employees in medical and other transit and other essential workers. So we said, please don't do it now. And furthermore, they had been proposing to do one for 7 years, but never got around to it, and they didn't see that this was necessarily the time to start. They wrote back in June and said, sorry, we're going to go ahead anyway. We think we have safety concerns, and there are planes going over. We responded in July, as did this is my individual response, as did, and I'll pass by it, MCAC itself, said, wait a minute, there were exactly 5 landings on 4L in May, and no, they didn't pick up in June. There were 3 landings in June. There's really no reason for safety to be looking at this. There's no question with only the few landings of any intrusion or other impact, and it has 7 years. Well, and we listed some other problems with virtual meetings where there's no interaction. It's just a presentation, maybe an answer to a question, but if they don't fully answer it, there's no interaction. That's my letter. This is the MCAC's parallel letter. They wrote back and said, sorry, we're going to go ahead. The only thing they did do is we said that the comment period of 30 days, which has been existent for decade, we wanted that to be 90 days to be able to have comments. That 30 days is too little, and they compromised and said 60. So I'll stop. I'm ending now. I hope I'm sure you're glad. Next steps, action items. Milton would need to rank those additional path alternatives, such as seek an alternate mirrored for our RNP path. That's the one showed above. Should we seek that? And let's note that as of 2017, 62% of all U.S. carrier aircraft were equipped. That's 3 years ago. And all of these are RNP equipped. JetBlue, American, Delta, Cathay Pacific, Frontier, Southwest, United, and Alaska. And JetBlue itself alone has 125 arrivals per day from 54 cities on peak days, and plans to go to 200. So there's no doubt in my mind that JetBlue path on the far left is very important, even though they call it suspended, and that JetBlue has the ability to use that and to use, of course, the 4L and any other of the paths, the 4R, and that consequently we need to be looking at the totality. And in connection with that, I sent an information request to the FAA looking for the noise contours for all of the planes on each of those paths that we've looked at in connection with the 4LEA, because it's all, I think, relevant given the closeness of the paths. And in addition, since the 4L can merge, we should look at the fact that the 4R equivalent a mirrored path should also be able to merge. And there's the green path that I showed you over Quincy and the magenta over Hingham. Those are also ones that could be pursued. And so we will need to enlist political support from the state senator, from the state representatives, from the US senators, and engage other cities and towns. Lastly, if there were a change in the Senate majority this year, I would want to renew the bill that I wrote in 2018 that was sponsored by the Democratic senators to mandate the FAA equal protection of communities via required dispersion of flight paths across available space, in quotes. We'll see if that happens. And the environmental assessment, we have to reserve our objection to any EA environmental assessment at this time. We have to outreach to Mattapan and Dorchester. Andrea Campbell, the city councilor, has been supportive, and Mike Zulis was helpful in making that happen. I've put half-page notices in the Dorchester Reporter and the Mattapan Reporter to generate some awareness. Engage both the 4L RNAV and JetBlue Path residents because both are impacted. And we have to make people realize that the DNL-centric metric makes this a very uphill battle to try to deal with the FAA, but there are ways to try to find disconnects between their model and reality, and also ways to mitigate, which I don't want to go into today, but we will prepare for the upcoming draft. There'll need to be private citizen efforts. This isn't an MSCAC matter. Private expert analyses. I've already personally hired one independent expert to look at one issue. And there's going to be a 60-day comment period that probably will start somewhere in, say, mid-September. That's what I have. Thank you. Sorry it took so long.
No, thank you very much. We appreciate it. I just wait for the slides to come down.
Oh, yeah, sorry, hold on.
No, that's okay.
How's that?
Thank you. That's excellent. Thank you. Would any members like to ask a question or make comments this time? Mr. Zulus?
Yeah, so I'll go ahead. A couple of questions. Tom, it seems like with respect to the 4R alternatives, is the next step to engage the public for the purposes of ranking those alternatives?
Yes, well, I think the next step would be up to the select board as to how they would go about determining what their ranking should be.
So it seems to me that that may be a public meeting, subject obviously to what the board thinks, but that may be a public meeting to engage the public and to get solicit feedback, and there may be other ways to solicit feedback as well. Two, let me ask you this, Tom. We've had some last couple of public comment sessions, some questions about maps that need to be corrected. Are there any maps, flight path maps, that we have on our website that need to be corrected?
No, the map on your website is the map I presented tonight.
And that was confirmed by MIT in its work?
I would say two things. First, the waypoints are with the waypoints. Now, I have a chimney designation for one overflight place, but those waypoints in writing were confirmed by the FAA. Mm-hmm. And then the location, as you saw, of the overflight of the 4R RNAV plane over that place between Milton Hill Road and Forbes Hill Road was confirmed in the observation you saw by John Hansman independently with actually no one other than his team there.
Okay. And then next, does the alternative flight path that we, this board, requested, that Milton requested, which I believe is that green path that goes over Braintree and Quincy, does that go over East Milton at all?
No. So, I mean, I could put it back up, but keep in mind that, and I'll say it this way, what we asked for was a path that would be a mirror image of the JetBlue path. That's a 24-degree angle, and three different ways I've shown that that goes. If you go back from the touchdown at the airport, that goes, sorry, going backwards, I know, but that goes over the Marina Bay, Boston Scientific, FedEx building. And I'll go further down. That's over State Street. Go further down. That's Hobart and Belmont Street. That's in Quincy, and State Street's in North Quincy, and it goes down from there. We also said, can you change the 10-degree slope angle at its peak? If you were to move that up, for example, is that doable? No, and because that's not doable, that path is simply an RNAV path that is not one. It sure is feasible, but it's not a mirror image, and it's not one that essentially has the same complementarity that JetBlue path has.
And Tom, I don't remember because we don't have the maps, but maybe you can answer me. How does the mirrored RNP path differ from the green path that goes over Quincy and Braintree?
Wait a minute.
And I'm sorry, I may have mixed up the names. But I think in the last slide you referred to the green path, the magenta path, and I believe the mirror RNP path. Which is
Right. Right. So the maybe we should try to get these back.
That would be great. Thank you.
Here, you have that?
Yep.
Okay. So let's go back and you'll see. Let's start where they're all in one. Okay. Okay. So this in magenta is the path that goes over Hingham and over water.
Yep.
The green path comes up over Braintree, over Quincy. This has a very low population impact. This has a lower population impact. And then here is this is the mirror image path. This is the mirror image of, they don't show it here, but this is the mirror image of the JetBlue path, and I'll show you that.
And well, you don't need to, Tom. But the question I have is, does the mirror image? I think I know the answer from the way this looked, but does the mirror image go over East Milton at all?
No, and I showed you that. Let me just. I'm not trying to. I'll show you three ways. Yeah, three ways.
It's clear.
Yeah, three ways. Here's the first. This is MIT slide.
Yep.
Here it is. Okay, you see Quincy. Here's the border of Milton.
Yep.
That's at a high, at a higher altitude level. Let's keep going. All right, and we'll find it when we get there. There's the Quincy path. There's the Hingham path. There's that Arnie's. All right, and here is their specific RNP analysis.
Yep.
24 degrees, and there is State Street. There, Hobart and Belmont. Milton is over here.
Yep.
Okay, and just to go, a little bit further, this again back in November. Now, I didn't have it exact, and they do. MIT has it exact. That's the FedEx building and the Boston Scientific, Marina Bay. Okay, so, and then here you see over Quincy. Now, lastly, oops, sorry. You put them all together, and again, here you'll see, there's the border of Milton.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Here's actually it's hard to see, but it's going right over Hobart, and let's call it Belmont. And then up here is State Street, south, and then here again is Marina Bay. It's going that way. So,
Final, I was going to say, final question for me. On these alternative plan paths that we would be asking other communities to share the burden with us,
right.
asking Quincy, asking Braintree, asking Hingham, were these paths used in the past? In other words, would this be a restoration of sharing the burden to the pre-RNEV era? Or is this something completely new?
All right. So with regard, let's take them one at a time. With regard to this dispersion, there's, is it the exact path, or did it also, angle over a little this way? That's actually, there's a 2010 to 2017 comparison chart that MIT has at a very high level. But people from their own life experience, say mine, I've been living here 65 years, one side or the other of East Milton Square, and the ILS path record itself would show that with respect to prior to the RNAV, there's a path in this area. The Hingham, as I think I mentioned, again, you'd have to get the ILS records. Planes went over that World's End. And one of the reasons that MIT said when we had all the various alternatives that, hey, wait a minute, if you're also asking us to dig in underneath for the census track data on paths, you've got to narrow down before doing so that we can have an ability to understand what your ranking would be, because that's some hard work. Now, the flight path track itself, without regard to the particular census count, may be a little bit more easily extractable, and it looks like they already did extract that some. So, as to the path that was not from Hingham but straight and over as to Quincy, my answer to that, candidly, is I don't know. Mm-hmm. But what I would say also is what we're trying to do is to look for the proportionate sharing of burden. And by proportionate, I mean that whether it's the same path or a different path, there's some percentage of the daily flights that were over, say, Braintree and Quincy. And I say percentage, not number, because of course the total number of flights have risen over the years. But if you looked at the percentage that were over Braintree and Quincy, let's say, respectively, and compared that to today, you'd find that the comparator of today is zero. And it's that comparison of what's the impact as a proportion of the in this case, 4-hour arrivals that was shared by those communities.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, I have a question for Mr. Doherty. And am I off mute? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Tom, thank you very much for a very thorough and informative presentation. The question that I have really relates to the 33L approaches. I think you showed us 6 approaches that they've asked to be considered. So I guess my question is, when we're working on ranking and prioritizing the 4R deemed flyable by and determined flyable by MIT approaches, should we be looking to do something similar? I would argue we should be looking at multiple approaches. And how likely do you think that is, given the challenges that it seems there may be with 6 approaches on the 33L departures? Should we be looking at multiple paths and advocating for multiple paths to be adopted? And are there any challenges presented by that?
Right, so taking those, I would break that into 2 parts. I've tried to put up, and I hope you have it, that variable rotation slide.
Yes. Okay,
so they're actually up the middle, where I'm drawing right up the middle there. That is one path, and it is the present path. And they're proposing 2 alternatives to that, which would be used in a sequence of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
I see. Okay.
And on the other hand, as you saw, they did get, the comments that, that in and of itself is complicated and would require 48. So I assume that's something to do with the day of the week, adding the complexity, 6 different locations, 8 existing RNAV end fixes. So, so as to the second part of the question, maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but we have, I'll call it the RNP mirrored path that mirrors the JetBlue, which would be one alternative for our path. Then we have, I'll call it over Hingham and water. Then we have over Quincy and water, right? There is the possibility of that path that goes over the expressway, but that also then, burdens those who already have their proportionate, their share of the ILS path that already does that. So if you looked at it as in that setting, you'd say, well, we're looking at those 3 alternatives, for example. How someone might rank one over the other is up to them. But in each of those instances, there's a question of how does the plane on one path merge with a plane coming in on the existing RNAV path? Well, in some instances, it wouldn't be merging. It might be that that path is exclusively being used. But there's an important footnote to that. If it's an RNP procedure and some of the airlines and planes, aircraft, don't have RNP capability and nevertheless are to be landing, they are going to have to merge with one of the other paths. So that's a degree of complexity that we would need to address. So I see it as 3 alternatives. The merging, I don't see as a problem as it relates to the way it was done on the 4L side. Every one of those were at least merging with an RNP. One of those planes was RNP capable, and it worked. This would be a higher number than on the 4L. As we all know, 4L in 2019 probably had maybe as much as 9,000 flights, and 4R, of course, has around 50,000 flights, so 5X.
Okay, and just regarding the 24-degree angle, is that considered a maximum amount that the FAA or MIT rather?
Yeah, no, because as you saw in the like the Hingham, and one of them has a pretty
right.
Yeah, a pretty curvy path.
Yeah.
Maybe this one. That's a sharp angle. That's less sharp. So the RNP itself can be, as you see, quite sharp. So in answer to that, if someone were to come back and say, well, gee, we don't particularly like it going over one aspect of, let's take that one that's over State Street South and goes up to the Marina Bay, and before that goes over Hobart Woods. Someone might say, well, we'd prefer it to be a little bit more toward Lincoln Square or something. I mean, that's potentially doable, I think. But this is me speaking, not MIT. I'm just inferring from what they said. What I do know is they said that the ones that I indicated as feasible are feasible.
Thank you. That's really the end of my questions, but I would like to take a further look at these slides and study them a little bit before we have what I think is a good suggestion that Mike made, a public meeting or some kind of a discussion to get some input from residents and hear what people's thoughts are on the flyable options.
Right. And if Mr. Dennehy would permit me, I could post these on the on the page of the MCAC page of the Town of Milton website. But if that sounds doable.
Certainly, yeah. This whole slide deck, Mr. Doherty?
Yeah, I can send it to you. I'll maybe Dropbox send it to you or something.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Mike, why don't we also send it out to Andy Schmidt and he can distribute it to the airplane committee?
Certainly.
Do any other members have questions or comments? Thank you, Mr. Doherty. I agree. It was very thorough, and I appreciate the action items and follow-ups. And yes, public input, I think, is really important. That I had written that down, so I appreciate you bringing it up. Mr. Zulus?
Just very quickly, so just so I understand, and either from you or Tom, I think the process here is now that MIT has determined that there are 3 alternative paths that are flyable, and has asked us to rank those paths. When we rank them, then is it fair to say that MIT will then make a recommendation to the FAA based on the ranking and based on the flyability? Is that the process here, Tom?
I think there's a middle step that they need. Their job is flyability. The other piece, though, is going to be community support. And so, so they can say that they think paths are flyable. The ranking will assist to the extent that we need data to support the proposition that there needs to be a proportionate sharing that is equitable and may restore sharing that pre-existed RNAV. In order to do that, rather than canvas across many, they said, look, you rank these, tell us, and that's a job that we would have to do to assist Milton's gathering community support, because the communities, let's say of Quincy, Braintree, or Hingham, would say, well, wait a minute, let's now look at what we were burdened with before and how this compares with that. And then after that package would then go to the FAA.
And when you say, Tom, community support, you mean getting support within the other communities? Is that right?
Getting at least support and or at least understanding of where the communities are with respect to those issues, right? Which is why I also mentioned the state senator and the state representatives and Congressman Lynch.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Ask a question for purposes of a public meeting. We've had a presentation tonight that I think has gone about an hour and has been very comprehensive. Do we want to, I wonder if we could, we wouldn't want Tom to have to come in and repeat it, I don't think. Maybe he'd be willing to do that or at least cover some of this, but I wonder if there's a way we can try to capture from the video from this meeting, the presentation, make sure that it's available so that people can watch it, and then we can have some input, maybe with a briefer presentation at the beginning of the public session to have a little bit of input so people see it beforehand.
Right. I would think we could capture it and put it into a webinar format. But Mr. Wells, did you want to say something? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, I keep it.
Okay.
I keep it muted. Never know when my 4-legged dog is going to jump on my lap. Yeah. My thought is just to Katie's point on what you said. Maybe we can ask Mike Lynch if he could dissect Mr. Doherty's presentation on tonight's meeting and make it available on the town website as a presentation by itself, and to the town website, and maybe not the town website, the Milton Cable Access, or both. But I think if we could dissect that out of tonight's meeting and get it up there sooner versus later, I think that would be. That way you won't have to look at our whole meeting and to find it will be in there by itself.
I agree. I want it to also be rebroadcast on Milton Access TV.
That's what I meant. Yeah, Milton Access TV and the town's website.
Right. That leads to my question. I was a little curious about what we see the timeline, but our target timeline for that. It sounds as if soon would be better, sooner rather than later.
This is Tom Doherty speaking. Yes.
Yes,
The 33L communities, for whatever reason, and Hull and Cohasset, with regard to over water arrivals that I haven't even gone into, they are further along. And on the other hand, we are now, at a good point. There's some sense on the part of the MCAC, on the part of FAA and Massport, hey, let's somehow get this concluded. And my response to that is, well, okay, yes, thanks. And we are in the process now of having the information with which to take another step. So I don't think we should or will be rushed. On the other hand, I do think we have to, what is the word, proceed with deliberate speed so that we don't, and I don't think we will, miss the opportunity to make our point.
Thank you. So that being said, is it people's impression that we would want to have a separate public meeting for this rather than having it? Yes, I see.
Yes, I think so.
I think either that or a short agenda if we have other items.
Right.
Keep it, the other business of the meeting short and try
Right.
to focus on this. Would September make sense? Does that fit into Tom's MCAC schedule? Because I think we should try to do it after Labor Day,
I
given
agree.
people's travel schedules and getting kids back to school and the pressures that are out there for other purposes.
Agreed.
I do think,
Oh,
yes,
great.
there's a general meeting, annual meeting, I guess, of the MCAC in October, and I know that there'll be some impetus to try to say, well, where are we and how are we going to get this all toward some type of finish line that will be raised then. So the further along we are, the better. September, therefore, would be good.
Good. Yes, Mr. Doyle?
Madam Chair, on your point about timetables, do we have an idea of the timetables needed by the other parties that are involved, FAA, et cetera, so that we can back map?
What I understood Mr. Doherty to be saying was that sometime in September to get public input would be good. And I think you're now asking about some of those other steps.
Sure.
So I think Mr. Doherty, knowing that there's an annual meeting in October, at what point should we be in all of these next steps?
As far along as we can be.
Okay.
So I think it would, if we can have the public meeting, get a sense of how these would be ranked. Meanwhile, then we're going to need to get from MIT and or Massport itself the underlying, I'll call it ILS historic data, right? Baseline data that shows what the degree of proportionate burden sharing was with respect to that affected other community. And we may be able to parallel process that, but to the extent we have not ranked them and said, well, which one do you want us to dig out information for first, it becomes kind of a catch-22. So.
Well, it sounds as if the first week of September may be what we would be looking at. And I don't know if we need to finish pinpointing a date now. I think that could wait. We know that it's September, and it sounds as if earlier in September is good, and that we've agreed that we would like it to be a standalone meeting or a very, very slim agenda. Otherwise, I favor a standalone meeting.
It's a slim agenda.
Yes, I know. We haven't experienced one of those in a really long time. But is that all right if we schedule this and then publicize it, or do people have a sense that they know the date that they'd like to do it, say, in the first week?
Well, the 7th is Labor Day, September 7th.
Oh, right. And you said you wanted to get us through Labor Day, so.
What does everyone else think? Should we try for that week or try for the week of the 14th? So the
Madam Vice Chair, if I might, we meet on the 9th and 23rd if we follow the 2nd and 4th
Right.
Wednesdays. It would be the 9th and 20.
Right.
Yeah.
So that could put us on, we could do it on the 16th if that's not too late. Or if we thought we could if people would want to add an extra meeting on the week of the 10th, we could do that, or we could try to keep the agenda smaller on our regular 9th meeting.
Or we could, Madam Chair, we could perhaps start at 6:30 and designate this for like an hour, give a good hour, an hour, 15 minutes to this. I don't know how much time you think. I don't know. Yeah, it's going to be Christmas before we know it.
I know.
You just went to
But
September 16th in like 5-minute conversation.
Right. I think this is a lengthy meeting. Yes, Mr. Schools?
Yeah, I was going to say, if we're talking about, Tom making a half-hour, 45-minute presentation, then I think you're going to want at least an hour after that for public
Yes.
comment.
Absolutely.
So then you're up to, hour and 45 minutes right there.
I'm more inclined to the separate meeting just so that people can't say we rushed them.
Okay.
I agree.
Yes.
Okay. So perhaps Mr. Dennehy can help us coordinate somewhere between the 10th and the 16th to get this done.
Madam Chair, one question.
Yes.
Would Attorney Doherty expect us to make a decision like pretty quick after having that meeting, if not on that night? I heard him
Mr.
mention
Doherty?
October.
I have no expectation. I think some of which the degree of ease or difficulty may itself be informed by that meeting itself, depending upon whether there's a sentiment in one direction or another. So I think it'll depend upon what the outcome is. There is some parallel processing we could do in the meanwhile, including outreach to the state representative and state senator, and get a bit of a sense there as well of maybe not the ranking, but of of their sense of the process.
Well, and this is such an important issue that affects so many people in town, and we've been working on for such a long time, that if we need to add meetings, I'm guessing the board would be amenable to doing that in September, just to make sure we get a timely response over to FAA group.
Right. Well, that's why I suggested either the 10th or the 16th, because fire stations is the 7th, and so are elections. We could do a Monday, but I think that presents problems for some members. So the 10th is a Thursday. So that's why I suggested those two dates.
Okay.
I might have a conflict on the 10th, but
Okay.
I would not want. I'd want you to have it. I'm the least knowledgeable person in this operation, so I'm going to be guided much by our MCAC rep and our colleagues that have done so much in this.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Doherty, again for all of your time and your diligence and the effort. We know there's a lot going into this, and more probably than we actually know. Are there any other final comments or questions before we let Mr. Doherty go for the evening?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Okay, thanks a lot.
So item number 7, discussion of we're discussing a town parcel that's abutting 145 and 167 Lyman Road. We received a letter from Dr. Vyas offering to purchase the property, and I'm looking to see who's joined us from staff. Mr. Dennehy, just to see if there's anyone who's here to brief us more, or if that is your job this evening.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I thought Mr. Vyas may join us on the call.
Yes, he was supposed to.
I don't
see
none of the
him.
names in the attendees list looked familiar.
No.
Hillary, do you know if Mr. Vyas is going to join us?
No, I don't see see him, Mr. Vias. If you're here, you can
Yeah,
use
he's
the raise
adopted.
hand on Zoom to identify yourself.
I know Hillary sent him the meeting credentials, and Allison had called him just to walk through procedures for the evening and also for sale of this kind or purchase of this kind.
Sure. So Attorney Freitag is here, and he can explain the process. But this is town land. It's a parcel of land that abuts the Granite Links Golf Course. It actually separates 145 Lyman Road and 167 Lyman Road. The resident at 167 Lyman Road would like to purchase this land. There is a process involved with this, and Kevin, Town Council Kevin Freitag, can give you a brief overview as to how that needs to take place, including up to and including a vote at town meeting. So, Kevin, you want to give the board a brief overview of what the next steps are for a process like this?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Dennehy. Just broadly speaking, there are a couple of steps that would be involved here. The first would be for the board, I think, in the first instance, to consider, based on its knowledge of the parcel, where it is in the town, and maybe some overall planning thoughts that it may have, whether or not this is a parcel that it would even consider selling in the first place. The second step would be to obtain an appraisal for that property. You're also going to ultimately, if you decide that it is in the town's interest to sell the property, you need to get authorization from the town by way of town meeting in order to sell the property. You'd also need to declare that the property is available, which is something that's done on the state's register site. And then there's also an issue with perhaps having to have an RFP for the sale of the property if the value of the property exceeds $35,000. So those two first steps, I think, are the most immediate for you to consider, which would be whether or not it's something that the select board would even consider suggesting to town meeting in the first place to sell the property. And then second would be to go and obtain an appraisal for that property so that you could determine what the next steps might be. Also, I would just point out that sometimes there's a choice to be made about whether or not you issue an RFP for the property first and then go to town meeting, or if you go to town meeting first and get authorization and then proceed to issue the RFP. And that's only, again, that's if it's over 35,000, but that's something that we can discuss later on when it's appropriate.
Thank you, Mr. Freitag. Do members have anything else to ask about the process? Excellent. Thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Dennehy?
I think Mr. Doyle had his hand up, and then
Yes, I was just going to say, and
Yeah.
Mr. Doyle would like to speak as well.
I can speak after him briefly. Thank you.
I just appreciated Kevin's outline, and I think a major determining point in that process is whether or not the town wants to yield the property to begin with.
Yes.
Has it been determined that there is no future use by virtue of possible plans, et cetera? Because once it's sold, it's not coming back to the town.
Right.
Once that determination is made, then I'd be comfortable with the rest of the steps, but that's just my perspective. Having experienced situations with other locations with land yielding.
Right. Well, and that this is really just to introduce this. We will have to do analysis and look at that together as a future step. So we're not quite there yet, but yes, we will do that. Have that analysis done and look at this further. Yes, Mr. Wells?
I concur 100. I saw Katie nodding her head. I'm like understanding this process and the steps we would have to take. I'm not even ready to have a conversation. I mean, I've read an email.
Exactly.
That this is like where I wouldn't even like put my toe in this water yet.
No, it's meant to be a slow process for a reason. Ms. Conlon?
Yes, I agree with Arthur and Richard. I think we need to do some due diligence here. And I thought Dr. Vias was going to be joining us, and we could have at least gotten a sense from him as to what his plans are. His letter talks about, excuse me, about providing details about what our plan is with the property. He does say he also wants to build a garage. So I'd like to know what the reason for the interest in the property is. But also my understanding is the neighborhood uses this, or some people in the neighborhood use this as a cut through to the golf course or as a means of passive recreation, walking through the path and up to the golf course when golf is not in season. So I think we want to determine what's the public interest here and what is the neighborhood interest. And by having this discussion, we're starting that process. Obviously we want to look into environmental issues and find out a little bit about what the history of this may have been and why this was left in the state that it's left in. Obviously, there is another entrance into the golf course, but that at some point, a few decades from now, that golf course lease will expire, and we don't know what the town may wish to do at that time with the property. Maybe it'll continue for a long time as a golf course. Maybe in a few decades, there's a different purpose that the property could be put to. So I think that we should begin the diligence process and get a sense of what the neighborhood's feedback and input might be.
Thank you.
Ditto.
Yes, Mr. Dennehy.
Yeah, and all very relevant points. We did put it on the agenda tonight for executive session to discuss if we were further down the road with this, and Dr. Vias was able to convey what Vice Chair Conlon had mentioned. There is some work going on since we received the letter. As Mr. Doyle would know, the conservation agent is taking a look at the land to see what it looks like at this time. Our new town planner, Tim Zerwinski, is taking a look at it, what the previous use was and what the future use might be, what the current use is now. And our chief appraiser, Bob Bushway, is taking a look at what the value of that land might be. So although it's on the agenda tonight for item number 28, I suggest that we defer that into a later meeting when we have a better grasp on our subject matter experts taking a look at this parcel.
Thank you, Mr. Dennehy.
Madam Chair, just for the
Mr.
media that are listening tonight, we just found out about this a couple of days ago. For the neighbors of Lyman Road, who are very organized and very together and lived through that whole building of that golf course and everything that went with it, that I just don't want the front page of the paper tomorrow that we're considering selling it. We're so far away from this right now. I just want to reiterate that.
Thank you.
Well, and it's just a narrow pathway. It's just it leads towards the golf course, but it's not golf course land. It's just, or not used for any purpose related to the golf course. It's just a pathway, as I understand it right now.
Correct.
So
I didn't even know it existed until a few days ago.
So just a little follow-up, just from my own knowledge of this, Mr. Denny, you live in the neighborhood. If you walk along Lyman Road, starting at Orchard Road, actually walk along the Granite Lakes property, starting at the dead end at Quarry, and follow that all along the Lyman Trail. There are numerous ways where the residents of those neighborhoods, and it may be only small, and we didn't know we owned this either, that's how they egress the walking path. It goes, if you've never been on it, goes the whole back of Lyman Road, all along the golf course, all the way up. You can walk to the clubhouse.
Correct.
And many people in that Lyman Road, Spruce, all that, Bailey Ave, all of them, they use those. And they are, Katie, these little small that we own. We probably didn't even realize that we own them, but they become the way that those neighborhoods enter Granite Lakes on a daily basis, just for passive walking and things of that nature.
That's very well said. And in fact, if we had a map of the parcel right now, it is believed that it may have been at one point in time an extension of Spruce Street. So where Spruce Street comes down and meets Lyman, across Lyman is this footpath. It's a bit circuitous these days, but it takes you out to hole number Granite 5, which is the bridge that you cross, for those that are familiar with the golf course. But it is a very highly traveled use of egress to and from the golf course, as the vice chair mentioned.
Mr. Doyle?
I just want to add to Richard's comment that we find a number of these situations on Conservation Commission site walks,
Yes.
not known to the general public, but at the same time, there are instances where people outside of the neighborhoods know of these pathways and use them as well.
Yes, I've been on site walks on Lyman when I was on the Conservation Commission. So there's, it's good that we're having the conservation agent look at this as well.
To that point, should we should we consider a site walk for this for the board and any interested members of the public?
I think that's an excellent idea. We're talking about, as Mr. Wells said, a piece of property we're not even sure, we didn't know we really owned it, and I think it would be a good way to engage the public as well. So we, I suppose when we're a little further down the road, we can decide on a date for that. We probably want to hear a little more from our department heads and the doctor. Is that people's sense, or would you like to get something scheduled now? Yeah, I think
We could schedule it offline.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, very good. We are to item 8, approval of water and sewer rates.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's my pleasure to introduce our DPW Director, Chase Berkeley, and Toby Fetter, who has been a frequent flyer at this board, usually during this time of year when we set our rates, water and sewer rates. Mr. Berkeley, I must say, is on vacation and is joining us, so I thoroughly enjoy him being here tonight. And Mr. Fetter, if we can, okay, I see Mr. Fetter has been unmiked, but Chase, you want to take it from there and welcome Mr. Fetter?
Yes, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Madam Chair. So Chase Berkeley, Director of Public Works. We're here tonight to present a recommendation for water and sewer rates for fiscal year 21. This is an annual presentation we do. I'm joined by Toby Fetter. He's from the firm Woodard & Curran, who has been doing the town's water and sewer rate analysis for quite some years now. So has a lot of institutional knowledge of our system and our cyclical patterns. So just run through some of the steps we take to get to this point, and then I'll allow Toby to explain what his analysis showed and what we need to do with the rates. So every year at the end of the fiscal year, we look at basically 3 things. 1 is our purchases of water from the MWRA. 2 is our sales to the residents of town, and then 3 would be the revenue that we take in from those sales. And so we designed the following year's rates to be the lowest possible to break even for how much revenue we need to raise for the budget that's appropriated by town meeting. And so we're coming off of what I would call a very low year as far as consumption overall. We purchased a lot less water from MWRA and we sold a lot less water. So we have less water to work with to fund the next year. And so we take that into account, but we also look further back than just the last year and look at 3-year and 5-year averages and where our consumption should be headed to make those decisions, so that we try to minimize any real large increases year to year overall and plan for, try to, use a buzzword, flatten the curve, but, as far as water and sewer rates. So just to give you a little perspective on what those costs go to, our largest one is the MWRA assessments. For water, it's just over half of our total cost, and for sewer, over 3/4. So in general, when MWRA changes our assessment, we need to mimic that change in our rates. So an interesting dynamic this year is MWRA actually greatly reduced those assessments for us because of the COVID-19 crisis. And so back in February, they were looking at applying a 3.5% rate raise to us, but they've since knocked that down to a 0.6. So that's really helped out with how much of a change we're going to need going into FY21. And just one other note on revenues. So we came up short for FY20 to where the revenues were budgeted, and we did need to tap into our reserve funds, both in water and sewer. On water, it was 260. Sewer was 264,000, and water 412,000 out of reserve funds just to make up our expenses, and our expenses were less than budgeted. So we have impacted those reserves as of ending FY20. So that's something we also account for when we set the rates. So with that, I'll turn it over to Toby, and then we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Sure. So good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. And I think that Chase hit the nail right on the head here. The fact of the matter is we have for a long time set rates within the town of Milton on basically what we call a 3-year average for the amount of water and sewer that we sell in the 4 different tiers that you have in both cases. And last year, the fact of the matter is the residents of Milton used a lot less water and sewer than they had in prior years. And so you had a very short year, and that ended up leading to the shortfalls that Chase just alluded to. And indeed, if we, and as you may well have the report, we used the same methodology for the coming year of using a 3-year running average, is ended up leading to really what we're talking about when we're asking for rate changes for the coming year. When we sell, even though the MWRA made their changes and basically did a lot to level your bill for the coming year, if we have to make the assumption that we're selling fewer units, obviously the rate per unit has to be somewhat higher for the town to still break even. And in the end, that's the net story for the rates for Milton for the coming year. And I believe this year we're recommending a 4% increase on water rates and a 1% increase on sewer rates, directly attributable to the fact that the long-term averages, or at least the 3-year averages, were decreased significantly by last year's shortfall of sales. And so with that, I'm more than happy to answer any questions. I have the report here in front of me, and would be delighted to answer any curiosities.
Madam Chair, if I could just offer a quick comment.
Yes.
So
that would have been good.
So just very preliminary into FY21, we have seen consumption come back up to what I would call a more normal pattern. I've included in your packet a graph that shows the last 3 years of water that we purchased from MWRA. And if you look at those graphs, certainly 2019 was much lower. And if you look at the pace of 2020, we're back up to a more normal place. So we don't know how the rest of 2020 will play out in 2021, but it
That's
certainly
right.
looks to be getting back to where we normally sit. And that's directly related
And
to
it's
seasonal effects.
hopefully help you recover to where you were at the end of the last fiscal cycle, right? So.
Yes.
Yes, Ms. Conlon.
I have a question, but first of all, Chase and Toby, thank you for your work, and I'm sorry you had to wait 2.5 hours to get
Yes.
on, but thank you for your patience. When I read the report about the decrease in FY20, I was really surprised because for the last 4 months of the year, with the pandemic going on, a lot of people were working from home, so it was surprising to me that water and sewer consumption would be down. Now, I know that's for the year, and we're only talking 4 months out of the year, but is there any way that it can be explained, given the fact that I would have thought the last 4 months, water and sewer rates would have been, or usage would have been way up?
Right.
Absolutely. And this is one of the sort of the tricky things about the way that water and sewer economics work, because you're working on a quarterly bill for the vast majority of your customers. So even if someone was working at home in April and May and June, the usage that they had in those months only hits their bill in July. which is the next fiscal cycle. And so the quarterly billing cycle within water and sewer utilities is absolutely related to exactly what you just alluded to. And I think that, Chase, I mean, you can speak for your thoughts on, on the first couple months, but I mean, there's no doubt that the amount of metered water coming out of the MWRA into Milton in the last, in May and June, really perked up. But the fact of the matter is you won't see that in a bill oftentimes until July. That's it.
Yep, I think that's correct. And just, to keep in mind also, although we had most residents home, large institutions, Curry College, Milton Academy, who typically pay all their water at the highest tier, which is the most expensive, were completely empty. So we really need this to play out a little longer to see what that, I'll call it the COVID effect, is going to do. Overall, it's just, I think we're just too early with the quarterly billing to really understand what that's going to do to us consumption-wise.
That's right, because I mean, one other thing to remind is, Milton has always had what I would consider to be a fairly steep and progressive billing structure, wherein you bill the largest users significantly more than the smallest users. And in a situation where you have demand destruction and where people stop using, especially low users, stop using water, it does have a disproportionate effect on revenue generation. And this is something that Chase and I have discussed many times, but I think we reflected fairly, and we talked about it quite a few times before we made the rate recommendation for fiscal 21. So I think it is taken into account.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Doyle? You're muted. You're still muted, Mr. Doyle.
I was going to ask, and I thank you for that. Mike, I wanted you to go ahead, but thank you, Madam Chair. If you had any insights on the COVID-19 effect on other communities similar to Milton.
Yep.
Sure. So,
go ahead, Toby.
I'm sorry, please.
No, go ahead, Toby. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Paige.
Yeah.
Okay. So we are monitoring a number of client communities. The fact of the matter is, it appears that the communities outside of the central cities are seeing increased usage in this, really the last 3 to 4 months, and that the central cities are seeing decreased usage. The only real question, and it's a very important one, of course, is if we're seeing increased usage and increased billings, are we still having the bills paid? And we don't know how that's going to turn out yet. That's the big uncertainty is, yes, are we using more water in the suburbs? The answer appears to be yes. Are we going to receive all of the bills that we issue fully paid? And that is unresolved.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mike.
Oh, Mr. Zales.
Just an observation, a question. The observation is, I don't know that it will have an impact, but it may. My neighborhood was off the meters because there was new pipes being put in for June and July. So I don't know if that would have an impact as well on the usage. But so the question is, and I think you answered. I'm pretty sure you answered this, but I just want to confirm it. So the net combined increase of water and sewer is 2.2%. But then the increase in the assessment from the MWRA is 0.6%. Is the reason for that delta the 3-year average and the shortfall from last year, or is there something else?
It's not the shortfall from last year. It's purely the decrease in the average sales volumes on the 3-year average.
Got it.
And in truth, hopefully in the long term, we'll see increased usage, which will reduce our need for rate increases. But I mean, for right now, we're just trying to break even as Milton always has done.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Wells?
just a follow-up to Mr. Zulis's. I know he's off the meter right now. Last year it was me. That's a yearly thing. Someone's getting a water project done every year. So and Chase, you could tell me right now. Someone's off the meter every year. So, and a lot of people are home. A lot of new pools. We'll see how it plays out. But I'm ready to make a motion if colleagues are all right with that. You all right with that, Madam Chair?
Yes.
At least for discussion. At least to get us to discussion.
Yes, please go ahead.
So I'll make a motion to approve the four-tier water and sewer rates as set forth in the letter from Director of Public Works, Chase Berkeley.
Mr. Doyle, you are muted. I believe you seconded.
I'll stay unmuted. Second.
Is there any more discussion? No. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Ms. Collins? Yes. And thank you again, Mr. Feder and Mr. Berkeley. We really appreciate your being there with us and all the work that you've done on this.
Go enjoy your vacation,
Yes,
Chase.
please. No more interruptions.
Will
My pleasure. Have a pleasant evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Toby. Thank you, Chase. Good night.
Okay, so now we move on to the water and sewer bonds for MWRA.
Madam Chair, I'm going to be recused, so I'm going to turn off my video feed and mute. And I'm going to run down the hall and make some tea. So this time, if I'm late, just start without me.
Okay, we will. Thank you.
Madam Chair, just the first discussion, I'll make a motion to vote the sale of the $1,264,000 water bond of the town dated August 17, 2020 to Massachusetts Water Resources Authority, also known as the Authority, is hereby approved, and the town treasurer or other appropriate town officials authorized to execute on behalf of the town a loan agreement and a financial assistance agreement with the authority with respect to the bond. The bond shall be payable without interest on August 15th of the years and in the principal amounts as follows. 2021, $126,400. 2022, $126,400. 2023, $126,400. 2024, $126,400. Same in 2025. Same in 2026, the same amount to 2027, the same amount to 2028, same amount to 2029, the same amount to $126,400, 2030. And that the sale of the $287,500 sewer bond of the town dated August 17, 2020 to the Massachusetts Water Resources Authority, also known as the Authority, is hereby approved, and the town treasurer or other appropriate town officials authorized to execute on behalf of the town a loan agreement and a financial assistance agreement with the authority with respect to the bond. The bond shall be payable without interest on August 15th of the years and in the principal amounts as follows. 2021, $28,750, the same in 2022, the same in 2023, the same in 2024, the same amount in 2025, the same amount in 2026, the same amount in 2027, the same amount in 2028, the same amount in 2029, and the same amount of $28,750 in 2030. And that each member of the select board, the town clerk, and the town treasurer be and hereby are authorized to take any and all such documents and execute.
Oh, we're having trouble hearing you.
Sorry, I had to scroll up a little bit. My bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Execute.
In the sale, yeah, the Massachusetts. Hereby and authorized to take any and all such and execute and deliver such certificates, receipts, or other documents as may be determined by them or any of them to be necessary or convenient to carry into effect the provisions of the foregoing vote.
Second.
Excellent.
I did the easy part.
Guys, can you hear me?
Yes, Jim.
Yeah,
It's,
this is Jim
thank you for coming and hanging in there with us.
On these bonds, it's a bit of a rush job because our previous town engineer, left to another town. New engineer came in. It took a while to get the paperwork in. These have to be in the hands of the attorney on Friday.
Mhm.
So I need them signed tomorrow by 10 o'clock by 3 people. I have to get them notarized by the clerk, and I have to get them FedExed over to the attorneys so we can get this money on Monday.
Excellent. I can make it then. Anyone
Mr.
else?
Treasurer, do you want to just give a brief overview of
Yes,
the good
that's
story
right.
that this is?
Yes.
Yeah, this is an interest-free bond, and they wire right into our MMDT account, which is an interest-bearing account. So we're actually making money, and time value of money, we do pretty well with interest-free bonds.
I can be there.
Great. Richard and Mike, one of you at least.
I'm fine.
Yeah.
Did we get a second though? Just, I know we're discussing.
Okay.
Did someone
We did.
second?
Mike Zulis
Okay,
seconded.
all right, thank you. Okay.
So, Jim, actually, just in case there's someone watches this who's not familiar with this process, I know we do it every year, but can you talk a little bit about the fact that this is interest-free and not everyone may be familiar with the MWRA and the benefits that we get from being a member. I know it's late. I'm sorry. I just.
Well, these bonds are to redo the water pipes in the town.
Mm-hmm.
So we get the money from the MWRA interest-free to get this work done. So it's a great program that we take advantage of.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments for Mr. McAuliffe?
How early can we go tomorrow morning to sign? What's the?
I usually get it at 7, but
Okay.
the bonds are up in Mike's office right now.
All right. Yeah, I won't be there. I won't be there before
Okay.
7.
Okay, but that's good to
8
know.
o'clock, the offices are open and ready to roll.
Okay.
Right,
Yep.
okay,
All right. All right.
thank you
They're
very
in the
much.
select board office, Mike. Come see me.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. I'll get over.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. McAuliffe. We do appreciate your waiting and staying with us here and explaining this.
Okay, thank you. Good night.
Have a good night.
Good night, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Jim. Have a good night. See you in the morning.
All right. Okay,
No
so.
I'm just nervous.
Yes, you're right. We have to vote. Thank you for that. All those in favor. Oh, and Katie's back. We didn't make it. All those in favor. We're still voting. Thank you, Katie. Mr. Doyle,
Yes.
Mr. Wells,
Yes.
Mr. Zulus,
Yes.
Ms. Collins. Yes. Now we can sign. Excellent. On to number 10. Okay. Ms. Conlon. Excellent. Now we are. The Community Preservation Act ballot question passed at town meeting, and now the next step is to have the board forward to the clerk a request to have the state okay our format and the substance of our ballot question for the ballot, the presidential ballot. In order to see if the residents of town will pass this. So, Mr. Zulus and Mr. Freitag, I know that you both were working on language, and we have a couple of different, three different versions. One from Kevin Freitag, Town Council, one that Mr. Zulus sent us, and the question is whether a somewhat simpler form of language that we have from Mr. Zulus is acceptable to the state. And I know, Mr. Freitag, you said you were also calling the Division of Local Services to check in with them. So I don't know if the two of you have had any other further contact and you'd like to say more about this.
So just to frame it, we have some language from the Division of Local Services. It is over 400 words. It's pretty dense. There are other towns who've had more concise, I think, summaries or used more concise summaries. And so, with about 100 and maybe 130 or 150 words less, I think for our voters and for our residents, we should do everything we can to make it clear and concise and with all due respect, Kevin, to you and to my profession, as unlegal as possible. And so I don't know if we're there yet in terms of what we can do, but I would like to try to do better than what the Division of Local Services has the template is. And my understanding is that though published recently is language that was used several years ago by communities, and the more recent language is more user-friendly for residents and voters, and so that's what I hope we can do. That's my story, Kevin. What's yours?
Good evening again, Kevin Freitag, Town Council. Pretty much the same thing. Division of Local Services has a template ballot summary. And again, there's sort of two parts to the question. There's one line that it has to be taken right out of the statute, so there's no room to modify that. But then there's a summary of what is essentially contained within the CPA. And within that summary, there's room for some discretion and for some creativity and as Mike pointed out, I think some simplification. The statute itself is quite dense, so it definitely makes sense to have that summary and to make it something that's readable and understandable. And I'm happy to continue to work with Mike and look at some of the examples that have recently gone through other communities and passed muster with the Secretary of State's office to get something that works for Milton.
Mr. Wells, because if you'd like to say something.
I think that's critical, and the fact that this is going to take place in a presidential election with a high voter turnout, I think.
I think
Mr. Zulis's point. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Chair. Please. No, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I think to Mr. Zulis's point, the simpler, the more concise, the better.
Yes, Ms. Conlon?
Do we have time at the next meeting to notify the clerk, or is there still a notification we need to act on tonight, subject to finalizing the language?
I believe she needs the language in early September. Is that correct, Kevin? September 5th?
That's what I understood as well, September 5th.
So we could act on this at the next meeting.
Or I'd even be, oh, sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Oh, no, I was just going to, I think we're going to say the same thing, Richard. At the next meeting, or if we, at the next meeting, and if we meet next week, we do it next week. The benefit, as I understand it, of getting it is sooner is it's easier for Sue. It's easier for our clerk. It makes things a little bit easier for her. And also, if the Secretary of State comes back and says, well, you need to fix this, it gives us time to do that. So I don't want to derail this or delay it, but I do think we can do a little bit better in the language. So.
Yes, Mr. Wells.
I'd be even, what I was going to add to Michael's point was that I'd be even like, this is such a simple vote that if we could get this to where we want it, that, a quick posted 8 a.m. or 8:30, a quick Zoom, and we get it done.
Mm-hmm.
Just as we've done in so many of the COVID things.
Right. I thank you. I was going to suggest the same thing because I think it's close. I like the idea as long as we're reasonably assured that it will pass muster. To make it simpler and tailor it a little more to our situation. So perhaps we'll meet next week, but if not, we could have that discussion.
I have every expectation we can get it nailed down by Friday.
Okay.
Have a meeting on Monday morning at 8. Post it.
I will be driving. Sorry, but you can meet without me. I trust all of you, or I'll try to phone in. But yes, I'll be driving across the country. So excellent. Actually, would people like to schedule a meeting for Monday? Or, well, let's just see if we need one next Wednesday first. Okay.
Why don't we do this? If you think, Madam Chair, can I ask this? If Mr. Zulis thinks with Mr. Freitag, if they're close, if they could just let Hillary and Michael know, I'll put it in my either Monday or whatever day, as soon as we can get it in there, I'll put it on an 8 o'clock or an 8:30. We already have one we have an 8 o'clock next Wednesday, just like we could, whatever. I'm all, whenever you want to do it, I'm there.
Okay.
What do we have an 8 o'clock for next Wednesday?
No, I do with Mr. Jenny, but if we went 15
Okay.
minutes early before that one, it's for you, and
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I'll do Monday, Tuesday, whatever you want.
Okay. Thank you. That's
Nod your head, Kevin Freitag. Nod your head. That's not the way we want this done.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for both for working on that. Appreciate it. All right. Now we can move on to the approval of the electronic, see what I have in my mind, the election warrant. Has everyone had a chance to read it? Yeah.
I was going to say, I'll move that we approve and sign the warrant for the September 1st primary election.
Second.
All those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. We will be deferring item number 12, which was acceptance of a grant to the health department. We don't have the information on it yet. Item number 13. So this is the closing of the warrant, and I'm not sure we have all the information we need. Mike Dennehy, I know that you were looking into perhaps having some more information about budget, but also additional information about possible departmental articles.
Correct. I did put the feeler out there to the department heads and ask them to ask their boards and committees. As you know, we've spoken to the planning board as well, and they're contemplating potential town meeting articles. The gist of this agenda item tonight is if we want September 9th to be the closing date, we need to vote on it tonight so that we can advertise it appropriately in the local newspaper. So this isn't to rush it, but if we want to close the warrant on 9/9 for a December town meeting, we have to properly notify the public and advertise, and we wouldn't have time if it was August 26th. Furthermore, if we don't do it tonight, then we have to push back the closing date, and then it's a shorter window from for the warrant committee to hear all the articles and get it to print and edit it. So.
Is it clear that we need one in December, though? Because it's my understanding that we really only need a December meeting if we have budget considerations to address.
I thought the fire building committee wanted to come in before town meeting.
They do, but we could have it in January.
Okay.
Yes,
So
we can.
they're fine
Yeah.
with either December or January. I didn't ask them about February. I know that we've done that in the past, but it was my understanding that the clerk, that was difficult too because of the annual meeting coming up. But
And
no.
there's been no new guidance from the state with respect to consensus revenue, except for what I had mentioned last week, that we're good through October with a level funded UGGA and Chapter 70 money at the governor's FY21 posted amount. So again, that's probably going to be a game time decision as to whether we need to do anything with the money. The town accountant has voiced her concern that if we do have a town meeting and we put money back in, we may eventually need it because if COVID rears its head again, then there's gonna be a shortfall again. So
Right.
we're kind of in flux with that one.
Okay. Well,
Unfortunately.
that's been my concern. So I unfortunately, yeah, we share that. It's a real concern. So.
Would you like
Yes,
a motion, Madam Chair?
Mr. Wells. Well, I think I'm not sure. I guess it depends upon your motion because I think we're not looking at a December town meeting, special town meeting anymore. Is that unless someone is really would like to?
Let's move to item 14 then.
Well,
I think if there's no budgetary reason to do it in December as opposed to January, then it's not so much a
Right.
rush tonight to
I
Right.
agree.
right.
I agree.
Okay. Well, I did work on some other dates.
But I think we need to get the accountant to let us know if there's some DLS or tax recap reason that we would need to schedule in December. So maybe we could find that out before we meet. If we do meet next week, we could take this up again.
Okay.
If there's a reason to do it.
Okay.
Yeah, and it doesn't
Yeah,
seem like
that's
there's
what
going to
I
be
thought you
too many articles, so the printing of the warrant wouldn't be the magnitude of the special town meeting when we had 10 articles, or the annual town meeting, which ended up being, quite sizable.
Okay, so, but the difficulty is that if we wait till the next meeting and then there is a reason, then can we move it to 12/14, I guess is my question.
No, I think 12/7 would still suffice. It's just that we have that shorter window. We wouldn't be able to advertise, we wouldn't be able to close the warrant date on 9/9. We'd have to push it out 2 weeks to 9/23. And then the window of printing and distributing the warrant gets a little smaller. And that's why I mentioned if we have only a few articles in there, it shouldn't be hard to edit and print and deliver.
Okay, yeah, we want to try to really work with the warrant committee to.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, please, Ms. Waite.
The absolute deadline to advertise for between the Milton Times and our office would be August 21st. So if you were to take this up at a meeting, hypothetically next Wednesday, you would still have time to close on September 9th. That would be your last opportunity.
Right. So we'd need a meeting for that next week. So if you could actually add that to a tentative meeting next week. I'm not saying we're going to have one, but it looks like we will anyway for the CPA, and we could add this to that. Thank you. Okay. So I guess we're deferring this. And, so that we could do those two things in a very short agenda after Mr. Dennehy finds out from Amy Dexter if there's a tax recap reason to have a December town meeting. Great. Okay, thank you. Okay, item 14. We have a motion to reappoint Cheryl Tagayas to the Master Plan Implementation Committee.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to reappoint Cheryl Tagayas of the Planning Board to the Master Plan Implementation Committee.
Second.
All those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes, and we thank her for her continued service. Next appointment, Equity and Justice for All Advisory Committee.
Madam Chair, I'll make a purposes of discussion. I'll make a motion to appoint Karen Grace Horan, Courageous Conversations Towards Racial Justice, Patricia Lattimore, Citizens for Diverse Milton. The only caveat here is I was told the MICA representative today would be Pastor Shelley Davis from East. Is it Shelley Davis? Shelley.
Yes.
East Column. And I said I would support her, so that's my only comment on Reverend Lisa Ward. I'm not sure which one it is, so because I already committed to it. But I'll read the name for the purpose of discussion. But someone wants to second it, and then we can move forward.
Second.
So you're nominating Pastor Davis?
So I'm reading it. Well, let me back this up then. I want to nominate Reverend Shelley Davis because that's who I was told Micah wanted, and I was asked yesterday and today would I support that, which I said I would, but I don't see Shelley Davis's name tonight. So did something happen, or is it something that someone knows that I don't know?
Yes, Mr. Zulus.
So this is confusing because on August 5th, we got an email from Shelley Davis saying that I'm pleased to let you know that my MICA, Milton Interfaith College Association colleagues and I unanimously affirm the Reverend Lisa Ward as our MICA representative to the Town of Milton Select Board's new advisory committee on equity, justice for all. And then she gave us some background on Lisa. So that is a surprise.
That can't get me in trouble. I don't want to be in trouble with my next door neighbor from 2 doors away. So I I have high regards for Shelley, and
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
if you
So-
tell me Shelley authored that, I'm fine. So I'll finish my motion with addition of the name Reverend Lisa Ward of Milton Based Clergy Association. That's okay. All right.
Yeah, and we can, and look, if my view is, if they want to change, we can change.
Yeah. Okay. I'm the same. I'm the fine. I just don't want to. I was asked about Shelley. I said absolutely, and then when I saw this tonight, I'm like, how'd that happen? So
Yeah.
I'm fine. I'm okay.
And no, it really happened from Shelley's email
Okay.
last Wednesday. That's how it happened.
Yeah.
That's why I asked. Is this something I don't know about?
Yeah.
So that's fine.
Yeah. So if I may, Madam Chair,
Yes.
just to give a little background, these are the three positions that we have designated in our membership as having representatives from, and these individuals have been nominated by those three organizations. First, Karen Gross-Horan. She is one of the co-founder, creative, and facilitative director of community of the Courageous Conversations towards Racial Justice. She has worked for several years for the United Way. She has background both in the private sector and the public sector, and certainly helped out this board in our discussions about racial justice. Pat Lattimore is has been suggested to us by Citizens Diverse Milton. Pat has been a mover in that organization for several years. She is a COO from the United Way. She's former SVP at State Street, controller at Picturetel. She's educated. She's a graduate of Harvard University and Columbia University Business School. And Lisa Ward, as we discussed earlier, Lisa is the Reverend Ward, is the minister of the First Parish Church and a member of the leadership team for Courageous Conversations. Reverend Ward began working with Courageous Conversations nearly 5 years ago upon her arrival in Milton, and has forged many key relationships with community and civic leaders, and is deeply engaged in the issues of equity and justice, and is eager to serve. And so those are the three individuals who have been suggested to us for the committee.
Is there any further discussion?
Was there a second to the motion? Did somebody second the motion?
I believe the chair did.
Oh, okay.
Am I right? Did you?
Yeah, well, I said second, and then actually I think maybe Mr. Zulus said
Oh,
second
okay.
as well, but yes, so thank you for checking. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. Item 16, discussion and approval, Equity and Justice for All Advisory Committee process to select and appoint the remaining committee members. So I think people will recognize that we have quite a few more committee members to appoint, and we're not doing this evening. We have received an overwhelming response, which we're very grateful for. But if we use sort of the traditional mechanism that we would be vetting all those people in a meeting, and as we've seen, we've already spent quite a few hours in this meeting. So we're hoping to provide a more efficient mechanism, and Mr. Freitag is here, and Mr. Zulus that can also speak to it. But Mr. Zulus, if you would like, there's Mr. Freitag to speak first. Yes. Thank you. Okay. Would you like to lead off, or would you like Mr. Freitag to lead off?
Yeah, I'll just elaborate on what you said. As far as I understand, it's unprecedented to have this many people who are interested, which is heartening. But it has resulted in a procedural issue that we haven't had to deal with before. So that caused Kevin to look for some options on how to deal with this procedural.
Yes, thank you. Kevin Freitag, Town Council. Again, good evening, Madam Chair. There are basically three ways that you can proceed. The first would be that the Select Board post notice of a meeting where it identifies in an agenda item that it's going to take up appointments to the positions that remained on the Equal Justice Committee. In order to do that, though, in compliance with the open meeting law, you'd need to actually identify all of the potential appointees for those 8 positions and then discuss them all. That'd be one way to do it. The second way to do it would be that the Select Board could create a subcommittee that would again be subject to all the restrictions of the open meeting law, but could meet as a screening committee and work through a number or all of the applicants, and then come back to the Select Board with a much smaller group, perhaps 10 or 15 finalists, after they had sort of determined, who were the most qualified to be finalists. They bring that short list of finalists back to the Select Board. All 15 finalists would be identified in an agenda, and then the Select Board could in open session determine which of those individuals they would like to appoint. The third option would be for the Select Board to designate one person on the Select Board to basically go through all of the applications and come back to the Select Board with a list, perhaps just of the eight individuals to fill the 8 remaining positions that that person believes is the person that's been designated believes are the most qualified for the remaining seats on the Equal Justice Committee, and then the Select Board at that time would take up those 8 individuals' applications. Their names would be identified on the agenda, and the Select Board could vote to approve or disapprove any of those appointments. So there are basically 3 options that you can choose from in this circumstance.
Yes, Mr. Zulus?
Can I just add one thing, and that is, Kevin, I noted in your email that you had discussed the issue with the Attorney General's office, and they had suggested that the second option, the screening committee, wasn't a perfect fit for this circumstance because that's normally used for employment purposes. So I just wanted to highlight that.
That's right. That's exactly right. Typically, a screening committee there will go into executive session and go through the initial set of applicants, usually to sort of protect the applicants who may be employed in a position already and are looking for employment by the town for a certain position and wouldn't want to have it become known to their employers that they're out looking for another position. So that's how that screening committee works. They meet in executive session. They look at the initial group of applicants for a particular position, and then they refer a group of qualified finalists to the ultimate decision makers, which would be the Select Board. And the AG's office didn't think that quite fit these circumstances, but thought that either the first or the third option were appropriate.
Mr. Wells?
Yeah, so what Town Council describes option 2 we've used with employment, DPW, the Police Chief Screening Committee. You keep that number right until you get down to the finalists. I think we saw at the fire station, most recently in the fire station. So I'm more inclined to go with option 3. I just think that's probably the best way to go.
I agree.
I think option 3.
If you make a motion, Richard, I'll second it.
I'll make a motion that we go with option 3 as described by Town Council. So I know it's in writing, but I don't have it in front of me, so I'll just make this as option 3 is described by Town Council.
Second.
No discussion? Are those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Ms. Collins? Yes. Thank you both. So the next...
I don't think we have to do it tonight either. I think that's a lot of work. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I think we should delegate someone if we're going to do that.
Thank you for reminding me. Yes, we want to do that before we move on.
I would vote to nominate Mr. Zulus if he'd be willing to do it, since I think he's spent a fair amount of time on this, more so than the rest of us, and I think it would be appropriate for him to do it if he's willing.
Are you?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
I don't think we vote. Did we make a motion and
Well,
second
it's
it?
a nomination. Yeah, I'm not sure if it was. So should we make it a motion? I'll move that we appoint, we delegate Michael Zulus to be our representative to select.
Second.
Let me just, where's the language to
Okay.
to select and recommend the
Under option 3.
committee members under option 3 and the alternate members.
Second.
I don't think we voted on
We
alternate. No, we haven't got to the alternate
haven't
members
gotten there
yet.
yet, and that's
We
one
haven't.
reason I moved on, because I thought that we would do this first, but
I want to have some conversation on the alternate members. So
Okay, let's leave out alternate members and just to designate the members.
okay. And we had a second. So Ms. Conlon,
Yes.
Mr. Doyle,
Yes.
Mr. Wells,
yes,
Mr. Zulus.
I'll abstain. Just not because I don't
You
want
have to.
you have to.
Actually, you have
I
to.
don't think I have to, but Kevin does, so I'm going to abstain.
Oh, right, okay. Well, Ms. Collins, yes. So, all right, now we move on. Arthur had suggested that we entertain the idea of using alternate members, and I think that we've found that some of us, probably all of us, think it's a good idea. I don't know, we'll find out in a minute, but other people we've tested the idea with also thought it was a good idea. So, Mr. Zulus, do you want to walk us through your proposed changes?
Well, I just implemented what Arthur suggests, so I'm going to defer to Arthur on this. I was really just a scrivener, so it's Arthur's. Arthur, if you don't wouldn't mind.
Very succinctly, and Michael has updated the language, this would provide an opportunity for anyone who is absent from this important committee to have a seat to be replaced at the table during their absence by somebody who would be an alternate. Generally, 2 alternates are proposed, and the alternate would sit for and vote for that person if there was a vote that came up. Otherwise, they would not speak unless the chair called upon them to speak, and they would not vote unless they were actually sitting as an alternate. If an alternate left that position, you have a resource pool to go back into for another alternate. If a member of the committee has to leave their position, you have an alternate who can take the position fully. So you've really protected, if you will, the functioning of the purpose to the maximum extent possible by what's intended. And Mike has prepared the language for that.
Mr. Wells, would you like to say something?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Arthur. I'm going to give a dissenting opinion. I'll explain why, and it's not on merit. It's more on the big picture. As senior members know, we appoint many committees here, and I can't think of any that we appoint that has alternate members. And I just don't want to open a precedent where I'd be more comfortable with Arthur's proposal a year from now or 6 months from now, where if the committee were to come to us and say we think we need an alternate member. And just I want to point to one historical fact. We saw, even though it was a tougher road for them to climb when the planning board tried to go for an alternative member at town meeting 2 years ago, and it went absolutely nowhere. I just don't want to start a precedent that we have to. Next, it'll be the traffic committee. Maybe the warrant committee will want it. That's my only thought, is that I just don't want to open Pandora's box where, okay, you set the precedent with a committee that we don't even know how they're going to, because they haven't dipped their toes in the water yet. That's just, I'd be much more comfortable looking at this 6 months from now versus doing it before they even started, just giving the big picture of all the committees we handle and all the responsibilities that come before this board on an annual basis. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. And I appreciate, Michael, I get your work on it. I get it. As soon as I saw it today, I understood and now that Arthur spoke, I understood the merits of it. But in a bigger picture, I also understood that I didn't think it was a box that a door that we needed to open right.
Mhm. Is there any other members? Yes.
Well, when Arthur mentioned this a couple of meetings ago, I thought it sounded like a good idea because of the high number of applicants and the great amount of interest we've had in this committee. I hear what Richard's saying, that we'd be setting a precedent, and I don't think we'd want to do this for every committee. I guess I'm still leaning in Arthur's direction because I think there's, with the numbers of candidates we've had, it would allow more voices to be represented, and this is such a global, all-encompassing charge that I think if we were going to do it, this is probably the committee to do it with. So, I mean, I'm open to however the majority wants to go here, really. I don't feel strongly one way or the other. I thought it was a good suggestion Arthur made to address the great interest.
Yes, Mr. Thorns.
So I too have been a little bit torn on this. I thought for a while, our alternate member is going to feel somewhat less worthy than the other members, and maybe we should just appoint 13 members. But the balance for me was getting that increased participation that Katie mentioned without increasing the quorum, which would make meetings more difficult. So I think Arthur's proposal is elegant in that it provides for more participation without creating an additional quorum issue, or a quorum issue because of the increased numbers that would be required if we had more members. So I think on balance, I appreciate Richard's argument. I think it makes good sense. But I think on this one, this is a little bit unique. So I think on balance, I may weigh in favor of Arthur's proposal.
And I have to say, I hadn't thought about it from that perspective. I think that if it were not a committee that has an 18-month period, I may be a little less likely to, or I may be a little more uncomfortable about having alternate members. But given that it's an 18-month committee and we have had so much interest, and if people were to need to drop out for some reason to bring people up to speed, I think for me it's that reason, but I agree, we would not want to make this a habit. I guess my question is there a way to acknowledge that this is a somewhat unique case so that that doesn't become a matter of course in the future? Yes, Mr. Wells.
Just back to the historical aspect, and I'm just drawing on my own history here. It was a significant process to add citizens to the traffic committee, which we all know. I know Arthur's just but Arthur, no, you've lived here long enough, Arthur, how critical traffic is and traffic injuries in this town. And Mr. Zulus clearly knows from the time he just spent. If he didn't know, he surely knows after the time he just spent the traffic mitigation. And the initial proposal that came forward to the traffic commission to be brought to this was to have 6 citizens on. I mean, and so that's why I'm just saying I'm not arguing the merits. I'm not arguing the issue. I'm just arguing in the big picture in the seats we sit in tonight that just don't want to open a door that, who knows what's going to come on Mr. Denny's agenda tomorrow. Like, hey, we think we should have alternates, and that's my only thought on this. It's just there's so much work. It's 10:30 right now. We're already a half an hour beyond Mr. Zulis's time, whatever it is, his window. I mean, you see how much work there is here. That's all. I think an 11-person committee is going to be function as is to add 2 more alternates. And I get it. I get what you're saying. Just another last historical, the 350th. committee was a very similar. There were massive numbers that applied to be on that committee. It was a once-in-a-lifetime type thing. It was a historical significance to the community. You're only going to be on it once. And town administrator at the time, I believe it was Kevin Murray, and that board had to whittle it down to make it a workable number. And it wound up being, I believe, the same number you're talking, Mike. I think it was 11. I've talked enough. Go ahead and vote.
I was just going to say, I think in terms of acknowledging that this is a unique or distinguishing it from other committees, I think we've done that in the discussion. I don't think there's anything we could do in the language of this language I wouldn't want to put that in the charge that unique or anything like that, but I think we've done that through the discussion.
I guess I'd be interested. I think I hear what Richard was saying about if we do this here, will that be something that other boards and committees then try or see that they would like to do the same thing? And but I'm not sure what the import of that is.
Oh, I'm sure you'll have committees that we will have requests. There's no doubt about it. I can think of one right off the top of my head right now. And as I said, my one thought is, and I know that I said weeks ago about taking baby steps, and there was an article written, and what I mean by baby steps is we're talking in an area that is extremely emotional and front center in our community, in our world right now, not just our community, in our world. And I'm more inclined to appoint the committee to determine who the committee is, put them forward, let them start, and let them come to us and say, hey, here's what we think, versus us trying to shape it before they even get there. We don't even know who the chair's going to be. We don't know anything. We don't know who the members are going to be other than 3 we were appointed. And I'm thrilled we put Pat Lattimore, because to me, when I think about this issue in this town, Pat Lattimore is front and center. It's how I first met her. It's how I first engaged with her. And from someone who wore a gun and arrested people for a good part of his life, I have appreciated the relationship that I had and what I took from her each and every day, even though I only see her once or twice a year. She probably doesn't even know I would ever say that.
Yes, Ms. Conlon?
Arthur, what's your thought on Richard's point about precedent and about maybe letting the committee get appointed first and come back to us with the suggestion if they think it makes sense to include an alternate? What do you think about that?
Well, there are a number of thoughts. One is there may be some other committees that might benefit from having some alternates, and somebody can make a decision as to whether or not Committee A would and Committee B wouldn't. That said, if you wait 6 months down the line, you lose the opportunity, and then you decide to have alternates, you lose the knowledge base of 6 months that the committee's been working on, and you don't then have somebody prepared to sit at the table when somebody is needed, i.e. for a quorum or something of that nature.
But who's going to determine who the alternates are? And that's another issue. I mean, it's like we're opening doors that do we really need to open them? I don't know which one of you said about whose feelings do you hurt, who gets to vote and who doesn't. That's my only, we're talking about equality and justice. Like, I want everyone to be equal,
Yeah, this board would decide on the alternate.
I know, that's tough. That's like another tougher decision.
Well, just the same way it would on the members. It would be just the same.
Richard, we get to delegate it to Mike Zulus to make that call.
Yeah, and I Katie, I get you, but that's like an unfair. I don't think that's fair.
Well, I think you have to ask people if they're willing to serve as an alternate. That's very important. Because I agree, Richard. You don't want to be offered something that you different than you thought you were getting.
It's hard. Like there are times when, like the Fire Station Building Committee, which is I thoroughly enjoy it and cherish it, but there have been times when people have said to me, you don't have a vote. That's a hard thing. Not to, I mean, I can live with it. I have thick skin, but that's a tough, and especially it's something as emotional and, as important as this. That's just, I think you all know I'm very passionate about this issue, near and dear to me. It is to all of us, but I just.
So may I offer something, and it doesn't have to be accepted, but I hear there's merit in what everyone is saying, and it occurs to me that if we could appoint them and have them decide on their first, maybe one of their first decisions is on the merit of alternate members. I don't know. I'm willing to be guided by them on that. I don't know how people feel. I wouldn't want it to get 6 months down the road and then find that we need people. Yes, Mike.
Yeah, I don't necessarily, I don't agree with that. I think we need to decide what this committee is going to be comprised of, and I think we need to do it up front. And I think, either it makes sense now or it doesn't to us. I think Arthur's right. If they're going to have enough to do and enough issues to look into, if their first issue is, well, do you need 2 alternate members? It seems to me that's the wrong start, right? There are other issues for them to resolve. I think this is one that this board should resolve, not that board. That board has enough to do. And I think Arthur makes a good point about, getting, if we're going to have alternate members, it makes sense to do it at the start.
I agree.
Mr. Doyle?
I just wanted to add, if I may, that the reason for proposing this was for the same reasons that Richard espoused earlier. This is so important. The timing is so essential.
Mm-hmm.
The issue is so big.
Well, are we ready to vote? I think so.
So I'll make a motion to update the proposal for the Committee on Equity and Justice for All to include the 2 alternate members with the language before you.
Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
I'm going to vote yes, but I'm concerned about precedent, and I'm not going to necessarily support this for other committees.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes. And I'll concur with Katie.
Mr. Wells?
I'll be the brave voter, and I'm going to vote no for the reasons that I've articulated, not on the merits of the committee, but on just the bigger picture of the role of this body to govern this town.
Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes, and I also echo Ms. Conlon's sentiments. Thank you. Okay. Discussion, approval, equity and justice for all advisory committee funding. I can't exactly remember who. I know we had talked about funding, and I believe Mr. Wells brought up $5,000, and I know Ms. Conlon was talking about making sure that that this committee had certain sorts of administrative support. So, Mr. Wells, did you raise your hand and want to say something?
I did, and I did bring that up, and I just want to reiterate that I'm making this one. I think this again is, Michael knows, or you all know, this is unprecedented for the point of committee. We didn't do this with the task force. I mean, so I can't ever remember doing anything like this, but and to those who are going to serve in the committee, I think that they'll need to learn is no matter how important the issue is, we can, I've said this, we can never look at the citizens like they're on an ATM card, but I think giving them a $5,000 amount to get started, to however this board wants to determine that it's spent, but to place market, put it aside and have it there. And perhaps to it will help to generate those on the outside that, may be willing to, as we saw in so many other endeavors in this town. Perhaps maybe we'll start something very positive. I'm making that as a motion if we put $5,000 aside.
Thank you. Ms. Conlon, do you?
I'll second it if no one else has already seconded, but I just, my understanding was this would probably be used for a stipend to make sure we have some administrative support available to the committee. Is that the
I
intent?
agree. Yes, I think
Yes.
so. And then going forward, then we can, but at least to get it, staffing to me and support by us, I think is critical to a committee that's coming in. Just like, you're going to look around each other and come from the worlds that they walk and say, we need A, B, C, and D. And I think we need to be there to be able to say, okay, here's how you can start that.
Thank you. Mr. Zulus?
I think one of the takeaways from the last meeting was to see if we could identify, or if Mr. Dennehy could identify whether we had that and where we could find it. So, and I haven't followed up on that, and I apologize for that.
Mr. Wells?
I think I talked about, I'm looking at Mr. Dennehy, I think I said it as an RFT when I mentioned it last. I'm pretty sure I didn't. I think I got that from you, Katie. I think so. If you would accept, I'll make it as it's not to put Mr. Dennehy's, I'll make it as that we approve $5,000 as a reserve fund transfer to fund the community and equity and justice. If you would accept that as a friendly amendment.
I think it was your emotion, Richard. So I think that's all you need.
Okay, so that's my motion. It's late. I'm out. Mike Zulus has me up past my bedtime again.
I had espresso. I'm rocking.
Okay, and now Katie seconded it. Yes. Okay.
Mike, sorry.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to make sure Mr. Dennehy did not have something else to say.
No, that's certainly adequate. Yep. And Vice Chair Conlon mentioned that this was unforeseen.
Yes, it is.
It would certainly qualify for a reserve fund transfer, and we'll certainly make sure that the funding's available.
And we should probably notify the warrant committee. They might want to just set it aside in the reserve fund rather than appropriate it right now, but we could at least notify them. I think that this will be coming.
That's a good idea.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, all those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. Excellent. I am going to respectfully request that we defer meeting minutes. I think some of us have not finished or even started looking at them. I'm terribly sorry. But I think we may need to pick up a tape for others. So, okay, great. Confirm future meeting dates. So we're looking at a meeting next week. Date and time to be determined with right now just 2. And I think we want to keep it there. Items, the CPA, and I can't even remember what the other
Town meeting.
Are we setting that for Monday morning or Tuesday morning? What are we going to do? Is that what you're referring to? Or was that,
yes, that's exactly what I'm referring to.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah. Yes. So do people want to set aside Monday or Tuesday morning next week to do those 2 things?
Tuesday morning's a little difficult unless we do it around 8:30 or 9. I can't do it earlier than that.
Okay. It's 8:30 or 9?
I'll do whatever's easy for Kate, whatever she wants. It's fine with me.
Okay.
8:30 or 9 on Tuesday work for me. That works a little better than Monday for me.
Okay. What's better for you, Katie?
I can do either one, just so long as it's not Tuesday in particular, if it's after 8:30.
Want to make it 9 to make it just easy that way, Katie? You don't have to worry about the time. Want to just make it Tuesday at 9?
Okay, great.
Mike Dennehy had his hand up. I don't know if he has
Mr. Dennehy?
Tuesday would work better just from a posting perspective. we would have to have Monday posted tomorrow morning early, which would be not a huge task, but
Right.
Tuesday would give us a little more time to
Okay.
post the agenda.
So Tuesday, 9 a.m.
Melinda, that works for you with your schedule?
I'm not positive that I can be. I mean, I'm going to be. Let me see.
We'll vote it for you, Madam Chair. We promise.
I think I should be able to do that, but I think it's more important that you all meet. So Katie, you might need to run the meeting, but I'll see. It depends upon where I am driving versus other things, moving children into college. So, but I think it's more important to get those two things done. But I will do my best to call in. Then the following meeting is the 26th.
I may be away for that one, Madam Chair, but go and have it.
Okay, and we still need to schedule the retreat.
But you did.
I thought we did too, but I think what I understand is that Saturday, September 12th, it's not really going to work for all of us. Is that right?
I think that's right.
That's okay.
I mean, if it's me, I can make it. I can figure it out. I can figure it out. If it's just me, I can figure it out. I don't want to
Do you
hold
want, Madam Chair, do you want to, just given where, especially kids in school and stuff and the uncertainty of what's exactly is going to happen, do you want to wait until like the first week of October, or is that too late? Just whatever the rest of the members think.
The first week in October, I don't know. That's a long time from now, and we usually have done this much earlier.
Okay.
But we may have to move it, as you said.
And COVID.
Right. Well, okay. So, Mike, if you think you can swing it, keep the date. But also, like, if it needs to be moved,
Yep.
we'll move it.
No, but I'll swing it. I can always. It's not. If it's at the COA, it's not far, so I'll figure it out.
Okay. Well, again, that we can move it.
And you might have young people camping out in one of the rooms at the COA, but we can do that.
Okay. All right. So then September is the 9th and the 23rd, but we're also looking at the meeting for the airplane public meeting, either on the 10th or the 16th. So those are the dates.
16th works fine.
But
if you have to have the 10th, just, for me, but if you have to have it on the 10th, go with the majority, whatever works.
Okay, but you said the 16th works better for you?
Yes. Thursdays are tough.
Okay, noted. Okay. So, we can firm that up. Well, if
15th.
do people want to just schedule the 16th so Richard can be there? I'm sorry.
What was that day? It was the 16th? 1/6?
The 16th is the Wednesday in between our regular Wednesday meetings, and
That's
the
fine
10th
with
is
me.
the day after our
That's good.
night. Yeah.
Yep.
So 16th? Okay, so we've scheduled that. We'll just need to publicize it. Okay. I think we're on to the town administrator's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I just want to reiterate what Joe Prondak had touched upon this evening with respect to the work that's being accomplished in unprecedented times. Took my daily ride around town yesterday and Monday in the heat and saw a multitude of operational people out doing their job, whether it's our public safety officials or parks, cemetery, public works. Unprecedented amount of work being done in that heat on Monday and Tuesday. So I just want to thank everybody for their dedication to the town and reiterate what Joe had spoken about. There's a lot of people behind the curtain that are working daily to make sure that the town tries not to skip a beat in these unprecedented times, but highlight those people that normally don't get the glory and fame, but make our cemetery and parks and other parts of our community so nice to see. So that's all I have tonight.
Thank you. I,
Madam Chair,
yes,
oh, I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Wells? No, no,
I
no.
just want to follow up on that. I was at Andrews yesterday and today, and in 90+ degree middle of the day heat, they were out there just right behind your house, out, cutting away. Just, I have to say, in the midst of this COVID, and you've heard me say this before, especially where our parks are just so critical to be used by the citizens. And I've mentioned to you, Linda, I've spent the last 4 Wednesday nights under the lights at Guy Road, and with people from all different towns coming there, both to play boys baseball and to play girls softball. And I'm so proud of the work that they've done to keep these fields and these parks the way they are. It's just, I had a teacher from another town just shake her head. My oldest daughter came to Monday night's game. My 3 grandsons, and she was like, my oldest grandson plays in another town, and they're like, this is just amazing. Just some of you may remember Guy Road not too long ago could only have the lights on one field at a time. You couldn't even play them on both fields, and now you can do it all at once. And they've really made those parks a true jewel for the citizens of this town, especially in the school thing. So I couldn't let that go. So thank you for that.
Madam Chair, one more thing, if I might.
Yes.
A special shout out to Paul D'Amano and all the work he did. Tomorrow's the last day of summer camp. In a COVID world, trying to put that together and execute it. Just under 100 children spent the last 4 Mondays through Thursdays, so it could be 5 weeks, I'm sorry. And the Cunningham Foundation for their generosity in letting Paul use every square inch of the property up there to make sure that kids had recreation this summer when we all need it most. So hats off to Paul and all of his staff for their work in executing that. Tomorrow's the last day, and I'm sure Paul will send them off with pizza or something nice.
Well, I hope it's a wonderful last day. It's really exciting to be part of a community that was able to do that, because there were communities that couldn't provide summer camp this year. So I feel really fortunate to that we had them and we were able to do it. So thank you. Do members have reports? Ms. Conlon?
I was thinking along the same lines as Michael Dennehy and Richard that this morning I happened to run into some of our DPW workers down at Central Avenue, Tom McCarthy, Gabe Febo, and Sam Gottlieb, and I just wanted to give them a shout out because, as Mike said and Richard said, these are the dog days of August, and it's hot and humid, and to be outside working in the Central Ave Business District is, it is a lot. I encourage them to try to stay as cool as possible, but that's not easy to do when you're working outside. So thank you to them and all of the DPW teams for all of the work that they're doing.
Thanks. That goes a long way, so I appreciate that.
Mr. Doyle?
I have no committee reports or anything of that nature, but I want to say a hats off to the cemetery staff. We had family work there this week, and it is just impeccable. The nature of the cemetery is really that which many people aspire to, a park. It's a gem in the community, and the staff have just done an outstanding job in keeping it that way, particularly during these past 2 weeks where we've had remarkably hot temperatures. It reminded me of when I worked in construction going through college, and it all comes back, and you have to say hats off to those people.
Madam Chair, one last time I will speak if I'm allowed. For those of you that don't follow, Lisa Ahern, our superintendent, has a wonderful Instagram and Facebook posting. It's called Stories in the Stones. And basically she takes the headstones of people that are buried in the cemetery, and she tells very unique stories about their lives. And one of them came in today about a set of flowers that shows up on every August 13th. So if you look up that story, it's pretty touching. And follow her on Twitter and Instagram. She does a really good job of telling the story behind the graves, and I think you really like it.
Thank you. That's wonderful.
Stories in the Stones.
third semester. Got it. Mr. Solis, you're muted.
I'll just add quickly, in addition to the Parks Department that has provided great opportunity for the children of Milton this difficult summer. So too has the Milton National Little League, the Milton American Little League, Milton Girls Softball. Not all communities have done that this summer, and those leagues have done a great job. They've done it safely. They've done it. They've provided a great outlet for the kids. I'm sure I'm missing other leagues. I just know about those three. Richard obviously knows about the softball.
Don't forget the Monarchs, the girls Monarchs in Milton.
Yep.
There's so many. There's so
Yeah.
You're right.
And
Milton, Babe Ruth. Yeah, Babe Ruth.
Yeah, Babe Ruth.
All the baseball leagues and the softball leagues that went forward this summer in a safe way to allow the children to have an outlet. We can't say enough about. I can't say enough about them. I think it's been great, and I appreciate it so much.
Well, this makes me want to take an ad out. Just congratulate everyone. Yes.
So, Madam Chair, I just want to follow up on that, and this is something I've only shared with you. So in the 4 Wednesdays that I've been a guy, I started to write an article about the picture that is framed there. It's a picture that most people in this town, especially in light of, and even the things we've talked about tonight, racial justice and equality, most people would never even see, and they probably never think that they'd look to see it from their children. But one of the things that struck me and that I've started to write about is that I always sit at the top of guy on. I've done that since I was chief, since Molly was 5 and first started playing. Pauline's coached the whole time, different teams. I never want to be one of these parents that's sitting right down there, right in the field, and either yells something at the umpire or says the wrong thing, and people look, oh, there's the police. So I've always said, plus it's great to sit up on that hill at Guile. It's as I said to someone last Monday night's game, it's the closest thing you're going to get to Fenway Park this summer, to sit up along Guile Road on that guardrail in the back of your car and watch it get the game under the lights. Or on the boys' side, that platform that they built, it's like its own right field deck. It just doesn't have Budweiser like Fenway Park does. But if you were to sit, and I know it's late, but if you were to sit and look at the picture that you see each night when you look down upon the field, and what struck me was on the first week, 4 weeks ago, Milton Girls was playing another community, a very affluent community, not far from us. And one of the mothers was beside me. I had no idea who she was. She didn't know who I was. It turned out she was a school teacher. And one of the things that she said to me was she was amazed at how diverse the fields were in Milton. And I don't usually think, because it's just the world you live in. And then as I sat and I started to look, and each week it's the same thing. You look, it's the girls' teams, a makeup of brown and white and different colors, and parents together cheering for their kids. Same in the boys' baseball. On the 4 basketball courts, it was a picture of diversity and kids getting along, even though social distancing might not be front center all the time with these kids. And for my youngest Molly, who's now 16, this year has been a different experience, because for 16-year-old girls, suddenly boys, 16, 15, and 16-year-old boys are coming to watch their games, which is something I've never seen before. But if you hear me often say about that we need to be, everything we do, whether it's government, I always said it's the police department, that we need to be a reflection of our community. I think in the heat of all the pain and all the turmoil that goes on in this country today, that each of us, and especially parents who are listening to me say this tonight, take some pride in your kids and the diversity they bring to their town. Thank you. Sorry, I got emotional. But I'm almost done with it. I've been writing a little bit of it each week as I sit there, and I'm going to publish it the Times the next week. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
It's something we should all be proud of.
And nature. Does anyone have any more? No? Okay. Is there any public comment response from members? No.
I have no response.
Thank you. Future agenda items, I think we have a handle on those unless someone has one. Okay. So I propose to enter executive session for the following business, not to return to open session. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
I think we need to read the reasons, and you have to state that.
Oh, I have to read the reasons first, right? Sorry, it's getting very late. We're actually going to, the last one, okay, to discuss the reputation, character, physical condition, or mental health rather than professional competence of an individual, or to discuss the discipline or dismissal of, or complaints or charges brought against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual. Number two, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel, specifically the Director of Consolidated Facilities. And we're going to be deferring the executive session to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property. As I declared, that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of a public body, specifically the town parcel abutting 145, 167 Lyman Road. That will be deferred.
Second.
Thank you.
I think we just need to add, unless you said it, Melinda, that that believing that having such discussion in open session with respect to number 2 would have a detrimental effect on the negotiating or bargaining position of the body.
I accept that. It's a friendly amendment. Thank you. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes.